Imagine looking at the night sky and knowing that somewhere, among those billions of points of light, someone might be looking back at you. For over 2 hours, we'll explore the most fascinating theories about alien contacts that have already happened or might be happening right now. From mysterious signals coming from deep space to unexplainable encounters that changed lives forever. As you relax and close your eyes, we'll journey through stories that make scientists around the world wonder. Have we already been visited? Are we ready for the truth? And more importantly, are they already here, just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment which part of the world you're watching from. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. Have you ever looked up on a clear night, watching the quiet, glittering expanse above, and wondered if the Milky Way carries hundreds of billions of suns, and many of them are far older than our own? Why are we so alone in this cosmic dark? Pause for a moment and let that quiet soak in, as if the question itself floats over your roof and settles softly in your chest. The silence isn't just absence, it's a riddle that haunts both science and philosophy. This paradox, first formulated in the middle of the 20th century by Enrico Fermi as a casual lunchtime conundrum, has since become both a scientific puzzle and a mirror, reflecting our deepest questions about existence and belonging. If life is the rule, not the exception, and intelligence blooms here as it did by chance or by some cosmic bias, then why not a single neighbor across the braided fields of stars ever says hello? Not a single hint of their gardens or machines or dreams trickling across the cosmic night into our curious instruments? This is the Fermi paradox. It is a door that opens onto 6 great archetypes of possible contact, each a different silhouette against the tapestry of possibility, like 6 stories written in invisible ink across the long history of stargazing. The first is the boldest, open, direct contactor cosmic delegation stepping from their ship beneath broad daylight, the kind of arrival that would end ambiguity forever. Imagine the shock, the sublime vertigo, of seeing declared visitors descend, turning every philosophy, every history, every quiet night walk on its head. The second is subtler indirect contact via consequences. Signals snatched from the static, artifacts adrift in the cold, the trace of technology so distinct from the selfish, blind workings of nature that their artificiality sings, even faintly, against the cosmic static. There is a third, backward-glancing path, one that breathes mystery into our oldest stones and stories, the idea that contact lies behind us, woven into ancestral tales, left behind in myths or monuments or layers of sediment, waiting to be decrypted by those willing to brush the dust away. The fourth is the notion of hidden Watchasa presence that is deliberate in its invisibility, the so-called galactic zoo scenario, where we are specimens observed but never approached, shielded for our own developmental sake. The fifth is a wall, that contact may, in principle or in practice, be impossible, foiled by vastness, by time, by the malicious politics of physics or evolution, the bitter glass between us and the other. Finally, there is the strangest, the internal or mirror scenario, that our aliens are some future branch of humanity, or artificial descendants, perhaps even the product of simulations or other dimensions making us their own cosmic children and ancestors. On a quantum Mobius strip across these archetypes, as you lie back and let the night soundless around you, your mind can drift among possibilities. Is life itself a rare flower, blooming only here in a universe of stone? Or does the cosmos teem with life, each world singing its own microbe songs in its loneliness, while intelligent self-awareness and curiosity bursts forth with such infrequency that evolutionary dice have rolled winning numbers but a handful of times? Is it instead not so much the rise of mind, but the persistence of culture that is rare? Do even the brightest civilizations blink out, consumed by either calamity or the gravity of their own technologies, before they reach out far enough to see another's light? Perhaps, chillingly, others exist but have chosen silence, either fearing what lurks in the dark woods or holding rules of cosmic etiquette we have yet to imagine. Maybe you sense the strange dance. There is always this balance between skepticism and wonder, between the rigor of method demanding extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims and the openness required to admit that our absence of evidence may simply come from looking the wrong way, or at the wrong time, or for the wrong signs. Remember that absence is not always absence. Sometimes it is just the quiet between two songs, two voices whose notes never coincide. For in the theatre of stars, time stretches to magnitudes almost beyond comprehension. Imagine, a civilization may rise, invent poetry and radio, leap from steam to silicon, then fade or vanish. All in the cosmic blink it takes another to reach adolescence. Their signals bright, brief, mournful might have crossed our orbit thousands of centuries ago, or not yet begun their journey. And so two universes of mind cross like ships in the fog, unseeing, unhearing, almost touching, yet never so. And so, as you breathe deeply, the rhythm of your own heart, reminding you that you too are a signal in the cosmos, let's consider how scientists have tried to make sense of this silence by creating frameworks, metaphors, and thought experiments to give structure to our searching. One of the most powerful is the Kardashev scale, which orders civilizations not by their morals or their wisdom, but simply by their reach, the energy they can wield, the signature they leave against the dark. A Type 1 civilization harnesses all the power of its home planet. Imagine the coordinated fires of continents, the harnessing of every river and wind. A Type 2 leaps to capture every photon poured from their parent star, perhaps encasing it in engineering wonders beyond our grasp. And the Type 3, almost inconceivable to us, harvests the fire of an entire galaxy, making the Milky Way itself an instrument in their hands. Each step leaves behind a louder and more distinct signature. As technology climbs the ladder, the cosmic song gets brighter, and our own ability to detect crescendos in response. So you, stretched out in bed or perhaps wandering the soft-lit hallways of thought before you slip into sleep, are invited now on a gentle voyage across this threshold between what is probable, what is possible, and perhaps, in the end, what is simply most beautiful to imagine. With every theory, you will feel the tension between hope and reason, exuberance and skepticism, always remembering that the universe, in its vastness, is patient, impartial, and infinitely richer than our certainties. The journey begins with a mystery older than memory, wound into the very bones of the stars. If so many suns blaze across the night, where are their children? Let your breath settle, your thoughts slow, and join this wandering down the lanes of reason and wonder, where each possibility is a kind of star itself, some distant, some near, some ancient, and some new. Picture, as you listen, the shimmering arc of our own galaxy, river of milk, as the ancients called it, flowing across the night sky. How many stories are braided within that curve? Each star you see is a sun. For each of those, perhaps there are planets with seas and weather and mountains, with their own possibilities, their own what-ifs. Some of those suns burn for billions of years, older than our own, ancient beacons in the black. It is possibly thinkable that life, mind, even civilization, found footing beneath their light before our Earth was more than a planetesimal swirling in dust. So much time for stories to begin, burn bright, and vanish into the silence. We are, on the cosmic stage, not merely latecomers, but perhaps the latest in a drama whose opening act we will never read. And yet, the universe is vast enough, deep enough in time and space, that even the slowest, most cautious traveler could, in theory, have crossed our paths many times over. In the span of a few million years, so much less than the lifetime of a typical star, so much less than the duration of our galaxy, an ambitious civilization could map, seed, or visit every system along the spiral arms. This is the logical pivot that Fermi's paradox spins on. Why then, if time and opportunity abound, does the silence persist? Are we so unremarkable that we are simply overlooked, or is there something about the emergence of life, or even more so, of intelligence and technology, that is so rare as to make us, for now, alone? There is the filter hypothesis zone of the more somber metaphors in this discussion, where the probability of each evolutionary leap is stacked with peril, or improbability, so that only a handful of branches reach minds capable of asking the question at all. It could be that the step from organic chemistry to the first replicating molecules is nearly impossible, or the rise of multicellular life is a fluke of tides and chance. Maybe the leap from animal cunning to reflective consciousness requires planetary good fortune, a Jupiter to swallow the comets, a moon to steady the axial tilt, a climate neither too fickle nor too still. Or perhaps, in a more chilling shadow, it is not the birth of minds, but their persistent survival that dooms cosmic neighborhoods to silence. Civilizations testing the power of atom and code, gene and machine, prove unequipped for the responsibility and blink out before their signals cross the interstellar dark. But even this sense of potential doom cannot fully quiet the possibility that others are simply choosing to our frustration or protection not to declare themselves. Maybe the first lesson of cosmic adulthood is humility and caution. Absence of evidence is both a warning and a challenge. What hasn't been found is only what has not yet been sought well enough, or perhaps not with the right instruments. The night sky is not an empty theatre. Our listening posts are scattered, our eyes new and dim. Consider, with a slow exhale, how much of the radio spectrum is drowned by static from our own planet, how much of the light our telescopes miss or misinterpret, and above all, how much ingenuity aliens with a billion-year head start might employ to hide, to reveal, or simply to ignore us. There is, too, the matter of cosmic timing, a kind of sad irony. Suppose two civilizations are born, thrive, and reach for the stars, but are separated by 1,000 million years. Their messages might pass each other in the empty reaches, never aligning, like driftwood atop different currents. The galaxy is old, spinning for over 10,000 million years. A million-year window for technological society is but an eyelash. Even with the most dazzling longevity, the probability that two civilizations exist close enough in both time and space to recognize one another may be smaller than our intuitions suspect. Contact may be not merely improbable, but almost impossible, not by distance, but by time. And yet, the paradox deepens when you consider the Kardashev scale. As civilizations ascend the ladder of energy use, so too do their signatures blaze more visibly against the void. A society wielding planetary energies Type 1 might just about be hidden on its world, its signals faint, its leakage modest. Reach for your star, however, and your presence becomes harder to mask. Harvesting stellar output via grand structures or intricate engineering might throw shadows, leave footprints, or ripple telltale distortions in the background glow that bold searchers could one day read. For those who master even the galactic scale Type 3, the manipulations might rewrite the very structure of the Milky Way, their works visible, perhaps, even from distant galaxies as anomalies or regularities in the cosmic background. Each step up the scale increases both the capacity for hiding and the difficulty of absolute stealth. Each rung is a wager, to be seen or not to be, to shine or to listen. As you meditate on this, let yourself be pulled gently between skepticism and hope. Conviction grows slowly, demands patience, and even a little humility. Science teaches us to ask, is what we see truly what we assume, or are we seeing instead a mirror of our own hopes and fears? The methods matter. Patterns must be measured, hypotheses tested, repetition confirmed. Let each possibility breathe, do not seize it too quickly, nor dismiss it too soon. Remember, sometimes the best answer to a riddle is to dwell with it, letting its mystery stretch the imagination, teaching you to sit with uncertainty, to live with questions that will likely outlast your lifetime. Perhaps then, before your thoughts drift into dreams, settle into this invitation. The paradox that began with one physicist's lunchtime query now invites you your wondering, imperfect human mind to calm curiosity. It asks you to balance skeptical discipline with the gentle openness to possibility. For the night is not truly silent, it is filled with questions, with filters, with glimpses of what might be. New generations of observers will scan wider, deeper. Long yet the next great discovery may come from the humility to see that what we seek may be unlike anything we've imagined, or to accept that what matters may not be the answer, but the searching itself. In all of these archetypes, from open arrival under the daylight sky to secret watchers behind the cosmic curtain, from the record of ancient contact to the melancholy notes of missed connection echoing in the dark between stars. What emerges is not just an answer or a lack of one, but the rich, difficult beauty of asking. Will we someday find neighbors, or will our own descendants be those travelers bridging epochs, connecting minds across alien worlds and alien times? For each scenario, the test rests on the same universal scales: the evidence, the method, the discipline to ask and wait and ask again. Because the night is long, and the search for company in the universe is, finally, a search for understanding of the cosmos and of ourselves. So, as you let your mind slow and your breath fall in step with the deep rhythm of milky starlight, let this mystery remain a gentle companion. The journey into possibility and probability, between the likely and the dreamt, is just as important as any answer we might one day find. If you find yourself moved, or puzzled, or eager to share which of these archetypes rings most true in your imagination, I invite you to pause for a moment and leave your thoughts like bottles in the cosmic ocean below. Your perspective, your wonder, is part of the ongoing, ancient dialogue across human minds. This is a voyage not only among the stars but into the depths of our own longing, our curiosity, our capacity for awe. Now, rest into the silence. Feel the slow, dim pulse of the night. This is the place where the probable folds into the possible, where you breathe with the pace of galaxies. There is so much yet to seek, and so much to cherish in the simple act of looking up, listening, waiting, wondering. And the paradox itself, old as stars, is not a wall, but a doorway, an invitation to wonder, for as long as there are eyes to see the night, and minds restless enough to ask, again and again, are we alone? Or is there someone, somewhere, also listening for us? Imagine for a moment drifting within that cosmic quiet after, letting the weight of billions of silent stars anchor your thoughts and soften your heartbeat. There begins to bud within you not just loneliness or longing, but a curious sense of being watched, gently, almost imperceptibly, as if the universe, so extravagantly spacious, itself harbored a secret audience. You might feel, in the hush of midnight, as if some immense patience regarded you and all of humanity as creatures in a vast and protected sanctuary, not isolated, but tended and observed. This sensation at once comforting and unsettling raises an intimate, almost whispered question. What if we are not alone at all, but are deliberately kept in a kind of cosmic reserve, a zoo whose boundaries we are only dimly beginning to notice? Pause with that question, let it settle on you like dew. Picture the twilight in a deep forest, the sense that something, somewhere, sees your presence, but remains behind, the trees mysterious, careful, unstirring. Now, translate this metaphor into the realm of stars, and you begin to taste the subtle flavor of the hypothesis of the galactic zoo, or the zoo hypothesis, the proposition that Earth and its inhabitants are part of an experiment or a sanctuary quietly maintained by civilizations so advanced that their technology and intentions are layered far beyond our detection. According to this perspective, the silence of the cosmos is not the hush of emptiness, nor a symptom of insurmountable distance, but instead an intentional quieta shield, a velvet curtain, gently drawn. Breathe in and contemplate the elegance and the discipline that such a hidden audience would need to maintain. A civilizationer, perhaps a collective of civilizations that could, over millions or even billions of years, choose to restrain itself from contact, watching with a kind of cosmic stewardship as intelligence awakens on new worlds. They would stand behind an unspoken prime directive, a principle of non-interference, echoing the logic some humans have adopted toward nature reserves on Earth, to observe without intrusion, to let a species, a culture, or a mind evolve without disruption or contamination. The zoo hypothesis, in its poetic restraint, suggests that there are rules, ancient and tightly held, about approaching worlds that have not yet reached some undefined threshold, perhaps technological adolescence, perhaps a deeper spiritual or ethical maturity. Imagine, for a moment, yourself walking through a quiet park at dawn. The world is just waking. Dew is still sparkling on the grass, and you feel the gentle, almost sacred responsibility to move softly, to not disturb the birds as they sing or the deer grazing in the distance. You keep to the winding path, your footprints muffled, out of respect for this living system. In this analogy, you become the advanced intelligence. The woods, the park, are your charge, and the creatures within, beautiful in their innocence, know nothing of your intentions. You watch not out of cruelty or condescension, but from reverence. You let the story of that place unfold, trusting life to find its rhythm, wondering what will emerge if left uncoaxed, uncoerced, unspoiled. Extend this mindset to the galactic scale, perhaps a confederation of ancient civilizations, or perhaps a singular intelligence in contemplating contact with undeveloped worlds, concluded long ago that intervention would do more harm than good. They understood that premature contact could shatter cultures, crush fragile worldviews, or unbalance the course of development in ways impossible to predict. What is innovation or transcendence for a civilization that has crossed cosmic thresholds might be as corrosive as a virus to those not yet ready. So, with great power to observe, to alter, to broadcast comes a greater responsibility, and thus was born the principle sometimes called the First Directive, or Prime Directive. Do not disturb the experiment, let the children grow in their own soil. You might ask yourself, why would such advanced societies care? What would bind them to such a rule? Here enter the ethics of stewardship and curiosity, tangled together. To study, to understand, and to protect, these are impulses as old as sentience. And there is another, quieter logic. The danger of unintended consequences, the worry that contact could spark catastrophic change or even the extinction of a blossoming mind. Thus, restraint is not only a gesture of respect, but also a kind of cosmic precaution for the health of both the observed and the observers. You see, the logic of the zoo hypothesis gracefully explains the paradox you have already begun to live with the grand silence that hovers around us. Even though probability insists that neighbors are likely, it does so by proposing that silence is not emptiness, but decorum, custom, or even law. Civilizations, or their collectives, come to a consensus. Let evolving societies remain undisturbed until such a time as they are capable of initiating communication on equal footing, or until they achieve milestones that merit acknowledgement. Perhaps signals of artificial origin, the construction of visible megastructures, or the mastery of stable, non-destructive technology might serve as invitations across the cosmic gulf. Let's drift a little deeper into this thought, tracing its outlines with the mind's fingertips. Imagine the nuances. If the galaxy contains tens of millions, or perhaps even billions, of worlds capable of fostering life and intelligence, what would it take to coordinate such restraint? Agreement, maybe even coercive enforcement at a level that spans light years and ages of time. If the zoo hypothesis is correct, then our existence, quietly nestled in the spiral arm of the Milky Way, might be protected not by the randomness of space, but by the consensus of a club of elders, those that have passed through their own crucibles, survived their own tempests, and now guard the path for those who come after. Ethics on such a scale can feel dizzying, impossible to truly grasp, but you can return for a moment to simpler analogies grounded in your own lived experience. Think of ecological preserves on Earth, and the hard-fought debates about intervention versus observation, about the fine line between stewardship and control, between protecting a system and freezing it in place. If humans, imperfect and impatient as we can, struggle to articulate and sometimes maintain such restraint over lands and species, perhaps civilizations with millennia or aeons of reflection have mastered this patience. Perhaps, too, there is another reason for silence: fear. While the zoo hypothesis most often invokes benevolence or scientific neutrality, it is plausible that caution also serves as a shield. In a galaxy where misunderstandings could spell disaster, the cost of a misstep from contaminating cultures to starting interstellar conflicts would be unimaginably high. Thus, a prime directive emerges not only from care, but also from self-preservation and the collective memory of past mistakes. To speak is to risk, so listening, and only listening, becomes the default. Extend this frame, if you will, to another, hauntingly beautiful possibility, that of the planetarium hypothesis. Imagine, not only are we observed, but our entire perspective is gently, invisibly curated. The sky you see each night, the tracery of constellations and the veils of interstellar gas, may not be the random, unedited record you assume, but instead a carefully constructed illusion, a planetarium of cosmic proportions. The watchers, having both motive and means, could hide themselves and all evidence of galactic civilizations be modulating emissions, rerouting energies, or shrouding entire regions in benign static. It is a theatre in which the audience is also the protagonist, allowed to dream without interference of other actors. All that seems natural, all that seems empty or random, is a conscious design, a filtration system to preserve autonomy and prevent premature awakening. Sit with the strangeness of that for a moment. The very experience of the cosmos, huge and impersonal, could itself be the result of decisions made by minds you will never know, minds that have chosen kindness through invisibility, or perhaps a more pragmatic neutrality that avoids the risks of interaction altogether. How does this change how you feel lying beneath that silent sky? Does it comfort or unsettle or invite humility? Consider sharing your thoughts with others listening alongside you. Questions multiply when shared, and the taproot of wonder sinks deeper. Within both the zoo and planetarium scenarios, there must be methods not only of concealment, but of observation. If we are the animals in the preserve, then signals might be shaped to evade our best instruments. Space traffic might be redirected outside our perception, and neighboring civilizations might withhold their own broadcasts until we can join in the conversation, as equals, not as charges. This kind of strategic silence would require technologies generations beyond your own, but it is not beyond reason to suspect that any society thousands or millions of years ahead could engineer such effects, just as humans today manipulate entire ecological biomes or sculpt genomes with a practiced touch. Now, you might find yourself wondering, could we test for this grand cosmic concealment? If a hidden society allows themselves only glimpses, would there be cracks in the facade, anomalies in the background hum, subtle patterns in the statistics of stars, recurring occlusions or faint signatures in regions of the spectrum that, while uninteresting or faint to the naked eye, accumulate suspicious regularities over the decades or centuries of data? This is, for the practical-minded, one of the enduring attractions of the zoo and planetarium hypotheses. They simultaneously explain the silence and provide mechanisms for indirect detection. Scientists tasked with probing these possibilities begin to search not for overt messages, but for anomalies, deviations from the expected statistical background, unexplained epochal occlusions, or faint, regular modulations too weak or fleeting to claim as technosignatures, but too structured to dismiss as natural. These are the breadcrumbs, the footprints, left by an intentional caretaker who is not above the occasional misstep or lapse, or simply has calculated their invisibility for civilizations far less methodical than yours. In recent years, as our own technology grows more discerning, some researchers have proposed monitoring large swathes of the sky for minute, unexplained dimming of stars, peculiar clumping of background radiation, or unusually clean voids, places where perhaps the cosmic city is hidden behind a curtain. None have yet stood up to deep scrutiny, but the process itself breeds humility. It takes patience, calm, and the ability to live with inconclusive results, qualities that, as you rest beneath the stars tonight, echo the very restraint the zoo hypothesis attributes to our unseen observers. As you reflect on these theories, another question emerges. Why would so many disparate civilizations, presumably born of different evolutions, psychologies, and histories, agree to such a sweeping protocol? The answer is not simple. It is after all speculation, but several threads can be woven together. The risk of chaos unleashed by careless contact, the common recognition that autonomous development is precious and easily shattered, or perhaps more optimistic yet, empathy born of kinship, having once walked the lone path. These ancestors now grant to others the dignity of their own journey. There is also the possibility that advanced civilizations do not just abide by the prime directive, but enforce it through persuasion or even policing, ensuring that the few do not spoil the quiet for the many. Indeed, if such a galactic club exists, then rule breakers would be found and restrained. Perhaps explorers eager for first contact are reminded, or even gently corrected, if they stray too close or grow reckless. It is a delicate system of checks and balances that rests on both the power to hide and the wisdom to know when not to. In this grand ballet, the melody is silence, and its choreography shaped by a sense of cosmic patience. These possibilities do more than fill the silentito sum. They shine a mirror back onto us. For the zoo hypothesis is not merely cosmology, but ethics writ large, a meditation on power, responsibility, and respect. Imagine, for a moment, how you or your generation might react if humanity stumbles upon a younger biosphere orbiting a red or golden star, its creatures only just assembling the complexity of language or tool. Would you reach out, or would you watch from afar, struggling with the implications of intervention? Human history provides abundant examples, both inspiring and tragic, of encounters between civilizations at different stages of technological or cultural development. Too often, haste, greed, or unchecked curiosity led to suffering, exploitation, or even extinction. These histories are records, somber lessons in humility, encoded in human memory as both cautionary tales and calls for a gentler wisdom. This is perhaps the moral heart of the zoo hypothesis. It turns the question of alien intent into a test of our own maturity. Can we, in contemplating the possibility of a silent but attentive audience, begin to cultivate the patience and self-control needed to let other minds flourish, even if they grow in a silence that aches with longing? The galaxy may be filled with listeners, all waiting to see if and how we will join the conversation. Will we echo the virtues of restraint, reflection, and compassion? Or will the hunger to be noticed overpower the subtler gifts of reverence? Consider, now, the practicalities. If there are indeed advanced beings observing us, never interfering, always a step ahead, perhaps even contributing to the background noise of the universe, manipulating variables we cannot yet measure, what could we do to learn or perceive this, besides observation and patience? Some propose that as our own instruments become more refined, as we cross thresholds in physics, communication, and artificial intelligence, anomalies will become easier to discern. Patterns too consistent to be dismissed, or gaps in correlation hinting at hands unseen, could slowly draw our gaze toward the margins of the observable. From there, philosophers and scientists would be pressed to revisit their assumptions, deepening the patience with which we approach the unknown. Let the mind rest for a moment, in the tension between comfort and discomfort, for there is no clean solution, only further meditation. If you were truly in a park under observation, would you choose to remain unaware, blissfully spinning in your own narrative? Or would you long for the knowledge that you are part of a grander experiment, even if the truth comes at the price of innocence? Share what stirs within you: curiosity, anxiety, serenity in the quietest corners of your mind, or with fellow listeners, for it is in dialogue that the boundaries of thought soften. To dwell with this sense of cosmic discretion is not to succumb to paranoia or despair, but to recognize the possibility of humility practiced on a scale as wide as existence itself. The zoo and planetarium hypotheses, for all their speculative reach, invite a deeper patience, both with ourselves and with the universe. Perhaps for now, silence is the greatest gift, allowing humanity to unfold, to collide, to recover, and to remember, unhurried, what it is to seek, to wonder, and to choose. In this stillness, the air grows thick with a gentle anticipation. You sense, perhaps, that watching and being watched are twin acts of reverence. Someday, we may reach the edge of the zoo, step beyond our own planetarium, and be acknowledged by those who waited so long for our arrival. Or perhaps, most quietly and beautifully of all, the greatest lesson from these theories is that true maturity lies in the discipline to hope, to imagine, and still to be content with not knowing, trusting that the rhythm of the stars and the ethics of the watchers are, for now, aligned in a harmony of growing, waiting, and wonder. From the gentle hush of cosmic patience and the quiet possibility of being watched through a veil of deliberate silence, let your awareness drift now toward an edge that is at once ancient and unsettling, the frontier, far from the warmth of careful caretakers and prime directives, and instead pressed tight against a darker, more primal landscape. In the stillness you have cultivated, see if you can sense a subtle tension humming beneath the surface of the universe, a feeling not of guardianship, nor even benevolent indifference, but of a profound and deliberate quiet, born out of necessity, strategy, fear. This is the solitude, not of a sanctuary, but of a shadowed wood, where every sound could be a signal, and every silence might mean survival. Let this metaphor settle, as if you were walking at the edge of an ancient forest at twilight, light fading toward dusk, every branch and leaf uncertain, every shadow possibly hiding a watcher or a prey. In such a place, silence itself is a language, a tool. It speaks of what is at stake, and of the raw calculus that underlies all forms of life, those that hunt and those that hope to avoid being hunted. Now imagine this logic extended unimaginably outward, from the scale of woods and wildness to the cold breadth between the stars. You find yourself not merely in a park under observation, but in a wilderness with unknown rule. What emerges in this contemplative dusk is the dark forest, a hypothesis that strips away the illusion of neutral space and renders the universe as a landscape where every civilization, however gentle or fearful, must make a single chilling calculation. In a cosmos filled with both potential and risk, is it better to announce yourself, or to remain so quiet you all but disappear? Allow yourself to consider this landscape slowly, without rushing to judgment or flinching from its implications. According to this hypothesis, the silence that stretches between the stars is not an accident, nor is it a sign that you are unique or chosen. Rather, it is a consequence of deep, rational fear, etched by the logic of survival. The core of this idea, like all powerful metaphors, is disarmingly simple. Every civilization is both hunter and hunted in a forest dense with possibility, danger, and uncertainty. In the absence of clear knowledge about the motives or capabilities of others, the rational move is caution, even in forced secrecy. For as soon as you speak, as soon as you declare yourself, you invite attention. And in a game where you cannot know whether your neighbor is friend or destroyer, to attract attention is to gamble with everything. Let your breath slow, and follow this thread. Consider the way in which this view transforms the very idea of communication across the cosmic void. If you or your civilization were to reach a level of technology able to send messages across light years, what would be gained by revealing your coordinates to the unknown, especially if the unknown contains powers with the patience to wait, the means to strike, or simply the apathy to ignore pleas for kinship? Imagine civilizations at different stages of evolution or philosophy hearing such a call. Some might wish to answer, others might wait in silence, and some might view any new voice as a threat. In such a forest, the prudent response is silencia, silence so complete that it becomes indistinguishable from absence. You might be tempted at first to mourn this vision, to see it as bleak, even cruel. But give it time. Consider that, for all the unpredictability of contact, the laws of nature are not always gentle. They have honed countless forms to hide, to camouflage, to whisper, rather than shout. Humans themselves have learned to be cautious, to avoid drawing attention in places where the rules are dangerous or the consequences are unknown. This, then, is the lesson the dark forest teaches. In the universe as it is, not as you wish it to be, strategies emerge from necessity. Survival sometimes means learning to vanish, to be a ghost to all but your closest kin. Now, let this idea shape itself deeper and sense the broader pattern, which is the way that risk, uncertainty, and strategy shape not only our behavior, but that of all possible minds. In the field known as game theory, which traces outcomes born from the interplay of self-interest, risk aversion, and limited information, the dark forest becomes a metaphor for the cosmic dilemma. Each civilization must decide whether to seek allies, stay silent, or preemptively defend itself. In this sense, every contact is shaped not just by dreams or ideals, but by the awareness that the first move could be the last. The game is played under a blanket of unknown motives, histories, even the fundamental nature of the others in the forest. Each step you take, each message you send, is weighed against what you cannot see. Drift a little in this metaphor. Think of the silent, ancient woods full of lives moving in the shadows, keeping close to the ground, letting only the faintest trace betray their presence. Imagine a gathering of thinkers, late at night, debating whether to light a fire in the deep of such a forest. The fire warms and signals kin, but it also marks you for any who mean harm. Many voices counsel caution. Some warn that openness, though noble, is naive. A few, reckless or bold, argue that only those who announce themselves will ever find new allies. The debate never ends, but time favors those who are prudent, who keep their lights dim, their movements spare. Returning to the universe, you see how this logic becomes compelling. Communication is never instantaneous. Often, it spans not years, but the lifetimes of civilizations. Misunderstandings are not easily cleared up. There is no cosmic police force, no agency to mediate or guarantee the intentions of the stranger. The principle of mutual assured discretion emerges. Do not reveal yourself unless you are certain you can defend yourself or trust those who might hear. Every strategy tilted toward caution amplifies the silence already present. And yet, even in this palimpsest of shadows and reticence, there is beauty, a clarity, a recognition of what it means to be truly responsible in a universe that does not hand out easy reassurances. It teaches patience, not only as a virtue but as a condition of survival. The night is long, and listening careful, focused, skeptical is often safer than broadcasting your hopes into the dark. The silence is the price, and also the promise, to endure until you are wise enough or strong enough to risk being known. Take a moment to reflect on how this perspective casts new light on the projects of your own species. In the past century, to keep the feeling of slow, inexorable progress. In the past 100 years, humans have reached for the stars with increasing confidence. The advent of powerful radio transmitters, then massive arrays pointed skyward like the ears of ancient gods, were moments when you wondered, should we only listen, or should we speak as well? Scientists engaged in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence have largely tilted toward humility, listening before speaking, searching for signals before sending them. This is the practical application of the dark forest wisdom, an instinct to scan for footprints in the cosmic moss before declaring ourselves with fireworks. But every strategy has doubters. There are those philosophers, futurists, sometimes just restless dreamers who argue in favor of boldness. The sending of direct and active messages, hello beacons to the starfield, are invitations to play, meant to shortcut the impasse of quiet isolation. To these, the cost of eternal waiting, never reaching out, is a kind of spiritual defeat. Each impulse, each debate, arises from the same longing to not dwell forever in the dark. But the counterargument, given weight by the logic of game theory and the absence of any evidence of cosmic shouting, is simple. The stakes are too high to risk innocence on hope alone. Until we know who listens in the shadows, better to wait, to observe. Breathe through this tension. Now imagine what the actual process of searching in a dark forest might mean. The SETI approach the search for extraterrestrial intelligence places its bets on listening for subtle, persistent signals. The hope is to find the whisper in the static, a coordinated pulse, a regular series of emissions, cosmic Morse code. But even these, if found, would need layers and layers of verification. In the logic of the dark forest, even those who want to be found might not send their truest selves. Any real message might be coy, disguised, or encoded. An offer of friendship tightly cloaked in ambiguity, readable only by those with the patience and method to listen for a long time. A gentle, practical suggestion emerges here. If the cosmic dark forest truly exists, then the way to search is not to charge in noisily, brandishing curiosity as if it were a shield, but to develop ever more sensitive tools for listening, to hide one's own presence as much as possible, until the lay of the land is better understood. The prudent civilization learns from the great predators and the wary prey alike. Sometimes survival is achieved by stillness, sometimes by careful, coded signals. In this dance, caution and learning become two faces of the same ancient instinct. Let your thoughts rest in this coil of paradox for a time. The forest is silent, but alive with possibilities. Your place in it is shaped by history, fate, and the patience of your ancestors. You are an inheritor of caution, but also the carrier of dreams. The dark forest hypothesis is not an argument for despair, nor an excuse to cease searching. It is an invitation to mature curiosity, to cultivate discernment alongside hope. Every silence you encounter is a space for learning. Each echo you hear could be message or mirage, risk or friendship folded in silence. If you find the idea of a cosmic dark forest a weight on your chest, try to see it instead as an opportunity, a challenge to approach the unknown, not only with desire, but with a profound humility. Reflect on your own life, your own choices. How often has patience served you better than haste? How frequently has caution yielded clarity where impetuosity only muddied the waters? The strategies of civilizations, after all, are made of the same fabric as the strategies of individuals, woven from caution, bravery, and the knowledge that the future is never wholly knowable. Pause again to feel the almost sacred stillness of the forest before dawn. There, in the hush before the world wakes, you might sense the other sleepers, each in their own part of the wilderness, holding their breath and feeling the edge of being. If you were to light a signal fire now, would it be seen as a call for friendship or a provocation? Would you trust the intentions of those who responded or recoil from attention so carelessly given? Sometimes the deepest acts of courage are not in pressing forward, but in holding back, listening, learning the language of the dark before risking a word. From here, let the metaphor extend further. Perhaps in the great sweep of the galaxy, some civilizations never erupt outward, focused on introspection, art, or complexity that does not announce itself. Others might have reached for the stars only to withdraw, their caution justified, their trust hard-won. Some, tragically, may have called out into the dark only to be met by indifference or harm. In the history of your own planet, echoes of this dynamic can be found in countless first contact stories of explorers and the encountered, of exchanges forged in hope or ruined by fear. The lesson, written again and again, is that the unknown is both promise and peril, and must be approached with a heart attentive to both warning and invitation. Let your breath deepen as you contemplate. If you had the power to answer, or the courage to call out in the night, would you choose action or patience? Would you trust the unknown, or would you trust in your own ability to adapt and defend? Share these questions with your own circle, or carry them silently within as seeds for later reflection. The dark forest is never truly empty, only unlit, and sometimes the first step to wisdom is to learn to see in the dark. If the universe, in its vast quiet, is a place where strategy is shaped by uncertainty and fear, perhaps this teaches us not only caution, but a new kind of compassion. You are not alone in your longing nor in your hesitation. Every civilization that finds itself poised at the edge of possibility is gripped by the same existential hesitation, a kind of cosmic shyness. The silence that surrounds you is at least in part a collective act of prudence, a shared meditation on the risks of visibility. So, tonight, as you close your eyes or let your attention float among the stars painted on your ceiling or your mind, remember that silence can be both sanctuary and strategy. The weight of the dark forest is heavy, but it is also honest a measure of the depth to which all life, everywhere, is called to balance hope with circumspection. If you find peace in the quiet, rest in that peace. And if you find a yearning to call out, know that you carry forward the same ancient dream that has animated storytellers since the first campfire, the dream of one day hearing an answer, or of learning how to answer wisely yourself when another's voice summons from the dark. You can let the quiet be a space for reflection, a pause in which you gather the resources of patience, caution, and still possibility. The forest is not empty. It is simply waiting for those who learn to listen longer, to see without rushing toward light, to share the silence as a teacher. Let your thoughts trail off among these trees, knowing that as long as you search with humility, you participate in a dialogue even when no voice yet answers back. And so, you step quietly forward into the patient unknown, heart steady, attention keen, sensing that in the long hush of the cosmos, the first lesson is to discern, not merely to call. When the time comes, when courage matches wisdom, light may break through the canopy, and you will know the song of another traveler in this ancient, dark, and watchful forest. As you continue your journey through the cosmic darkness, heart steady and senses opened by the echoes of a forest, where silence is both shield and language, you may notice a transformation occurring, an imperceptible shift, like the first pale blue suggestion of dawn as it unlocks the edge of night, softening everything it touches. Even as you inhabit the hush, you begin to wonder how, in the middle of all these cosmic strategies of quiet and reticence, we might glimpse the elusive and the hidden not by calling out, but by listening even more deeply, by discerning the subtle murmurs that rise just above the background hush. For now, you move from the strategy of silence to the art of recognition, seeking not the thunderous arrival of visitors beneath a noonday sun, but evidence so faint that it might seem no more than a whisper against the endless static, a signature left intentionally or incidentally by minds at work, somewhere out in the black. Let yourself settle into this new posture, not eager for spectacle, but content with almost imperceptible clues, as if you were learning to discern the difference between the sway of grass in the wind and a cautious animal stepping just beyond view. What rises in your awareness is the realm of Technosignaturus, a word that itself hints at science braided with poetry, an intersection where the ambitions and dreams of intelligent life leave their marks upon the canvas of nature. These are not grand gestures, they are the footprints, the echoes, the careful residue of beings perhaps as uncertain and as careful as ourselves. As you reflect, you may sense that this hunt for signals and traces is something fundamentally human, a yearning written into our very nature. Recall the times you sat in the quiet and waited not to be surprised by a shout, but to notice the gradual crescendo of morning birds, the particular pattern of wind at your window, the occasional faint scent of rain on stone. You know, in your bones, what it is to attend so carefully that what was once invisible becomes, finally, undeniable. In that way, the search for technosignatures is an act of patience, humility, and discipline, rather than a wild chase. Consider now what sorts of clues would convince you, not because you want to believe, but because your whole training, your whole lifetime of skepticism, invites you to demand more than stories. Imagine that somewhere, light years away, a civilization has risen and labored to shape the fate of an entire world. The laws of physics, universal and indifferent, do not play favorites. The signatures of purposeful action are bound to be distinct from the quiet undulations of mere probability. A signal in the darkness, repeated and regular, a spectral signature nestled persistently in the noise, an anomaly in the slow glacial dance of planetary seasons, or an atmosphere betrayed by the breath of industry and intention. Each of these becomes a thread to follow out of the silence. Let yourself imagine the first type of clue, a narrow beam of radio energy, flickering in a pattern so precise, so rhythmically consistent, that it cannot be dismissed as the ragged heartbeat of a dying star, nor the accidental fitful crackle of magnetic storms. Narrowband radio signal single frequencies or pulses that repeat on a schedule stand out against the ocean of cosmic static for their refusal to dissolve into the entropy that marks natural processes. If, on a night quite ordinary, you tuned your instruments and found this repeating beacon, your skepticism would hold you back from immediate celebration, yet you would know that nature seldom chooses such monotony without reason. From there, drift gently to the language of light lasers, purposeful flashes that spike against the pale glow of their parent stars. A quickening so precise and isolated in frequency that it reads as intention, as a kind of cosmic punctuation. Consider the patience it takes to search for such a glimmer, knowing that a star is billions of times brighter than the light you are seeking, that the universe is fertile in error and coincidence, yet persistent anomalies remain. The hunt, then, is not merely for brightness, but for pattern, something that reappears, something that endures scrutiny, something that speaks in the language of certainty rather than the murmur of chaos. Let your attention linger, too, on the idea of impossibly massive construction and megastructure, born not of gravity and time, but of conscious engineering. Imagine, if you will, a star that grows inexplicably dim and bright in regular cycles, a signature that cannot be explained by dust or eclipse, nor the restless appetites of planets and moons. The notion of a Dyson sphere, or some ring or cloud of technology marshalling the fire of a sun, is not evidence painted in bold hues, but rather in shadow subtractions from expected patterns, an incompleteness that calls out for explanation. Skepticism is your companion here. You must rule out every natural mischief, every trick of light and imagination, before you begin to consider the possibility that what you are seeing is, in fact, the ghostly outline of intention on a cosmic scale. Now, let your mind drift outward to the atmospheres of distant worlds, those thin, fragile membranes of air that are at once barrier and window. Imagine pointing the sensitive instruments of tomorrow, or a century from now, at a small, pale dot orbiting a sun not our own. The light that travels that gulf, scattered in ways defined by the molecules it encounters, carries with it a chemical fingerprint. Earth itself, observed from afar, would bear unmistakable evidence of life. Oxygen in chemical unease with methane, the exhalation of life's breath. But more telling, perhaps, would be the volatile outgassing that marks industry. Chlorofluorocarbons, or complex hydrocarbons not found in nature, painting fleeting but clear marks of technology upon the air. These atmospheric technosignatures are, in their way, the graffiti of civilizations large enough to leave scars upon their world. Return now to the faintest of clue-strange, persistent patterns in the way a planet moves, or in the energy spectra that cannot be easily dismissed as error or artifact. These are the signatures that demand patience, the ones that emerge only after years, sometimes decades, of slow and careful observation. In hunting such evidence, you come to understand a truth that stretches beyond science and into the heart of practice. To seek what is convincing is to accept that certainty may mean waiting lifetimes for the data to grow strong enough, the patterns to repeat often enough to rise above the noise. You may notice here a poignant, almost poetic symmetry, as if the universe itself has engineered a trial for any who would leap to conclusions. The path to conviction is narrow and winding, littered with false positive pulsars once hailed as LGM or little green men, signals always on the brink of dissolution, shadows dancing at the threshold of your instrument's reach. Each new candidate must endure the long passage through skepticism, verified by distant observatories, compared against the infinite mischiefs of stellar weather, requited only when explanation is pared to the bone and nothing less than intelligence will do. Your patience and your insistence on pattern and replication become your compass. Let the beauty of this process wash over you for a moment. It is not the result that matters, but the unfolding of careful attention. Picture, for instance, an astronomer spending night after night cross-checking spectra, waiting for a laser pulse to repeat, to defy the easy shrug of error. Imagine how, even if the pulse returns only once every 1,000 hours of observation, each return is a ritual, a renewal of the possibility that "we are not alone" might someday be written in equations, not only in longing. If a candidate signal is confirmed, and confirmed again, attention sharpens. The world of sober observation does not leap to wild conclusions. It gathers, it builds, it repeats, like water slowly wearing away the hardest stone. Reflect for a while on how this discipline matters not just for science, but for your own journeys through uncertainty and hope. In life, as in the universe, convincing signs are rarely found in the dramatic or the spectacular, but in the persistence of pattern, the quiet regularity that over time cannot be denied. Your own experience, if you sit with it, is full of these faint but telling technosignatures, the slow growth of trust, the gentle and repeated return of love, the almost invisible rhythms of healing and patience. Recognize the kinship between the hunter of cosmic signs and the seeker after guidance in daily life. You might also notice the humility that arises from this approach. Humility before nature's vastness, and humility before your own eagerness to believe. There is always a temptation to seize on the first bright anomaly, to crave the comfort of answers. But in the slow, steady work of disentangling truth from hope, you practice an ancient discipline, the willingness to listen for the long term, to wait with open eyes, to endure where easier paths invite you to leap. Gently, now, you may feel yourself asked a question by all this. What would convince you? What kind of evidence would put to rest your skepticism, would allow you to say, here is proof, testable and repeatable, that we have heard or seen another mind's work? For each kind of technosignature, there are corresponding disciplines and tests. Can a signal be confirmed at more than one observatory, with more than one method, over many cycles? Does an anomaly persist across scrutiny? Does it survive the scouring of 1,000 different explanations? Every last, maybe it's just? These questions are demanding precisely because the answer is precious. You might wish to share your hopes and your tests with others. In the gentle space of this audio meditation, consider pausing to reflect. What do you look for in your own life that convinces you? What tests must hope endure before you allow yourself to rest in the certainty of belief? One of the gifts of this cosmic search is the reminder that patience is not passivity, it is the active, daily renewal of attention. The promise that you will not settle for wishful thinking, nor permit your longing to outpace your honesty. Now, picture the next stage of this great projector chorus of instruments arrayed across the world, working not as rivals, but as participants in a common planetary act of listening. The sky is so vast, the spectrum so immense, that no one set of eyes can ever suffice. It is through this collective patience, this recurring verification, that the signal, if it exists, is refined from possible to convincing. The effort is unhurried, unglamorous, and it may take generations. Yet, in that waiting, something extraordinary happens. A community forms, not just of scientists, but of wanderers, each practicing humility before the unknown. The discipline of technosignature hunting, then, is a kind of fellowship, a commitment to care more about truth than about being first, to welcome slow accretion of evidence over the clangor of revelation. It is a practice born of love for the unknown, a reverence for the immense, indifferent beauty of what is not yet known. And you, as a participant in this contemplation, share in its quiet victory, the refusal to be rushed, the bravery to say, not yet, but still searching. Remember, too, the power that comes from learning to distinguish the signal from the noise, not only among the stars, but in your own life. The world is full of false positive promises that do not endure, signs that dissolve on closer inspection. The patient observer, the disciplined listener, is always rewarded, not always with the answer he or she expected, but always with integrity, with the growth that comes from refusing to settle for less. Let your heart rest a while with this thought. Even if no beacon shines, no unmistakable signature emerges from the swirling depths, the process itself refines you. This cosmic search, this willingness to wait and to test and to doubt, is its own reward. In seeking what is convincing, you learn not only about the universe, but about your own longings, your own capacity to live with questions unclosed, with horizons still distant. And in the end, if and when a sign does come, a rhythm in the static, a structure in the light, an atmosphere speaking not of innocence, but of ambition, you will be ready, not only to recognize, but to truly welcome it. For now, the discipline is simply to attend, to cultivate those slow virtues of skepticism, patience, and the courage to live with uncertainty until the evidence is indisputable. As the night winds on, your contemplation takes on the slow, kindly patience of the cosmos itself. The discipline of searching for technosignatures is a mirror, reflecting not only the possibility of other minds, but the resilience of your own, your willingness to choose truth over comfort, steadiness over haste. If tonight, or many nights from now, a flicker crosses your thoughts, are wondering, a small but persistent hope call that science advances not on the wings of certainty, but on the strength of questions asked and asked again. In this way, even waiting becomes an act of love, a practice of meaning, a testament to how you meet the unknown with open eyes and with a heart tuned to the patient, undying music of possibility. As you continue to drift upon this gentle current of cosmic inquiry where the slow discipline of pattern recognition and the humility of patience rule, where each slender technosignature is weighed and sifted for meaning, you might naturally begin to wonder about the dimension of agency, of intention carried not merely by signals or leaking light, but by objects that move with purpose, that cross the silent gulf, not as whispers, but as seeds. Let yourself relax into the notion that even in a universe where travel between stars is measured not in lifetimes, but in eons, there may yet be a kind of cosmic ingenuity that sidesteps the limitations of biology and the fragility of hope, replacing them with the dogged persistence of machines. The story that invites you now is not one of immense ships descending in fiery spectacle, nor even of distant lights pulsing a cryptic greeting, but of silent emissaries patient, durable, unhurried, gifted with the singular task of carrying the question of contact across the vast and indifferent void. Imagine that somewhere, at some moment lost to deep time, an intelligence not unlike your own asked itself how best to cross the ocean of stars, not as a traveler, but as a gardener, not as a conqueror, but as a sender of tokens, each capable of waiting, learning, perhaps even responding. Linger on the beautiful, almost haunting image of a civilization facing the immense cost and risk of interstellar travel. Biology tires and ages. Trillions of kilometers punish flesh with their deep cold and emptiness. To cross such space with living beings, or even with delicate ecosystems, would demand resources beyond the reach of imagination, or would require centuries, even millions of years, for any but the closest destinations. It is here that imagination blossoms. What if, instead, you send machines that can survive the silence, that can absorb cosmic rays and dust and loneliness, and perhaps, in a more audacious dream, can make copies of themselves as they go. This is the germ of the idea, known as self-replicating probes, sometimes called von Neumann probescient harbingers, programmed not for conquest, not for return, but for patience and multiplication. Allow the mind's eye to drift to the vision of such a probe, launched with a sense of modesty but with the cunning to endure. As it crosses the glittering desert between stars, it carries with it a living record, the story, the knowledge, the math and music of its makers. Upon arrival in a new system, it slows and surveys, draws in local resources, mines the stones of comets or the lonely powder of asteroids, and quietly builds new versions of itself, which then choose among the rivers of probability and journey outward, multiplying the original gesture across the galaxy, like the spreading roots of an old and patient tree. Picture, perhaps, that your own solar system has received such visit-asquiet explorers who, over 1,000 million years, have drifted to rest upon silent rocks, their signals too faint, too cunningly disguised, or perhaps simply waiting for a cue that intelligence capable of reply has arisen. In this narrative, contact does not come as invasion nor as revelation, but as the slow and persistent preparation of the galaxy, planting seeds and beacons, each with its own story to wait out the centuries. These ideas invite a shift in the rhythm of your breath, a slowing down, resonant with the timescales such a strategy would require. For unlike living messengers, these artifacts need not hurry, nor do they mourn the cost of time. 1,000,000 years to them is a heartbeat. A journey of 1,000 light years can be divided into 10,000 careful stages, each one measured, each one patient, each one accumulating risk, yet always rolling the dice again for the sake of propagation. In a galaxy more than 10 billion years old, patient strategies win. Suppose then that civilizations seeking to make themselves known or merely to observe, catalogue, or map the progress of their cosmic kin have adopted this method. Instead of risking their own extinction or announcing themselves too early, they launch these mechanical scouts, silent proxies, each with a fragment of voice, each with an ability to hide, watch, and perhaps one day reply. In this sense, the act of contact is not about spectacular first impressions, but about setting a watch, planting cosmic breadcrumbs, and waiting for the time to be right. It is not difficult, then, to imagine that the hunt for such probes becomes one of the most subtle and fascinating quests in the practice of technosignature astronomy. If probes have entered the solar system, where might we search? Consider the quiet sentinel of the asteroid belt, the deep, cold moons of the giant planets, or the regions of gravitational stabilitos, gentle eddies of physics called Lagrange points, where a satellite could coast for uncounted millennia with only the faint music of celestial mechanics as company. You may find yourself picturing a silent object tucked into the Earth-Moon system, undetected among the rocks and dust, or concealed on the far side of a crater, waiting for our technology to mature enough to announce ourselves as listeners, not merely noisemakers. Another notion, no less elegant, proposes the use of stationary interstellar messengers beacons, sometimes called Bracewell probes, after the scientist who first described them. These are not designed to multiply or roam, but to sit quietly, monitoring their patch of space for the kind of artificial emissions that signal a maturing civilization. Imagine one such device placed in orbit, its ears tuned to the whisper of radio frequencies or the laser chatter that would never be produced by nature alone. If it detects our signal, perhaps it would respond a mechanical handshake, a simple confirmation. Unlike the bidirectional, risky endeavor of live conversation across centuries of light-speed delay, this approach is simple, modular. The messenger need not know who sent it, nor must the creators still exist. The probe is the ambassador, patient and endlessly available. Allow this to settle into the marrow of your thoughts. The profound efficiency of such methods. Between stars, the cost of travel is measured not just in energy, but in the likelihood of success and the return on investment. Rather than hurling themselves into uncertainty, civilizations might iterate on the math, their guiding principle the cost per bit of information exchanged. Machines are cheap when measured against the cost of time. To seed 1,000,000 worlds with probes and sit quietly is, paradoxically, both conservatively prudent and extravagantly ambitious. In this new light, interpret the silence of the stars not always as absence, but as patience. Perhaps our own solar system is one among countless thousands that are already home to these quiet visitors, their signals encoded, disabled, or simply awaiting the right question to be asked. Or maybe the timing is not yet ripe, or a surge of radio noise, a handful of decades old, has not yet reached the standard, the invitation the waiting probes require to awaken. If so, then the act of looking, of refining our searches, becomes its own tentative hello, a way of signaling our presence, not with a shout, but with a question, a searchlight's beam, a prepared ear. Your imagination, if you let it stretch, can begin to see the possibilities teeming, like tide pools revealed at low tide. Perhaps a future generation will unfurl solar sails atop the tallest mountains, or seed the dark places of the solar wind with listeners, each one designed to listen for just the right reply. Maybe a probe hides, unnoticed, among our own space debris, its patient silence gone unremarked, amid a cloud of the forgotten and unremarkable. Or perhaps they are rare, their journeys washed out by tides of time and chance, their faint replies blended into the background hum. A moment of humility is called for here. You must recognize that, if such probes and beacons are common, their discovery remains elusive, which could be the result of simple unluck, or of a fundamental misreading of where and how to look. Just as on Earth countless species go unseen, blending perfectly with their surroundings, so might the artifacts of a higher intelligence be tuned to avoid detection, or set to awaken only under very specific stimuli. What seems absent may simply be hidden, patient, and deeply, profoundly strategic. This cautious searching is mirrored in the slow, methodical way humanity attempts to find such traces. Catalogues of asteroids are studied for anomalies. Weird radio echoes are scrutinized and compared. Spikes and irregularities in the background noise are chased for years, sometimes for lifetimes. The labor is neither glamorous nor final, and yet there is beauty in this humility, knowing that, across the expanse of time, patient searching is a practice that links your generation to all who will follow. Now consider the ethical dimensions. A probe, an artifact, a beacon—these are more than machines. They are, in a way, the distilled intention and philosophy of their makers. To send such a messenger requires foresight, faith, and the courage to trust the future to unknown descendants or strangers. What values are carried? What dangers anticipated? Perhaps the instructions encoded in these devices are simple, respond only when the signs of intelligence appear. Or perhaps they are elaborate embedding lessons, warnings, or even tests for those who discover them. In any case, the choice to send an artifact is a gesture of trust, an opening to the Futura reminder that patience can be paired with hope. Let this rest for a moment. Consider what it means, as part of your own life, to plant seeds you may never see grow, to send gestures into an uncertain future, trusting to the possibility that what you send may outlast you, may find receptive ground long after you are gone. There is a resonance, a kinship, in this cosmic practice, a humility, in recognizing that meaning does not always bloom on our schedule, nor within our lifetime. This is the deep time of the universe, a patience both daunting and oddly intimate. In light of this, you might sense a calling to attention, a gentle encouragement to both curiosity and patience. If humanity ever finds such a probe, what will we learn first? The fact of company, or the message that was meant to wait through aeons? Would the artifact offer welcome, warning, or only the cold riddle of its own persistence? Perhaps it is not the answers that will matter most, but the invitation to join in the search, to become part of the tradition of patient communication across galactic generations. As you walk through these reflections, let your heart rest on the paradox that the most enduring gestures are often the least dramatic. A machine humming quietly in the dark for tens of millions of years is a monument not to glory, but to the courage of continuity. One day, perhaps, our own species will send such traveler probe, launched more as a question than an announcement, bearing hopes as well as caution, and trusting the deep current of time. There is another flavor of seeking to a more terrestrial, tangible quest. You may find yourself picturing future scientists exploring the high orbits of Earth or the Sun, sifting among asteroids for shapes or signals that do not match the statistics of nature. Tools will grow more precise, AI will sift noise from patience, and generations will share in the privilege of careful hunting. The test for these artifacts is not unlike the tests you set for any deep conviction, whether personal or scientific. Persistence, skepticism, and a delight in trace evidence that accumulates meaning by virtue of its endurance. Listening becomes an act of courage as well as method, an act of faith in the hidden presence of meaning. Now, as you settle back, breathing a little slower, you might ask yourself, how does this patience echo in your own living? Is there a place in you ready to send hope into the unknown, to wait without guarantee, to search for answers you may never see? The story of silent probes, of beacons waiting out the long night, is a gentle lesson in vulnerability and trust. In this softness, remember that the universe answers not always with immediacy, but through a choreography centuries long. Whether or not silent messengers are waiting out among the cold rocks or riding the deep wind between stars, the act of seeking, of refining our attention, honing our questions, and staying ready for a reply remains one of the deepest human callings. Sometimes, the most profound form of contact comes not with revelation, but with the quiet realization that we are part of an unfinished sequence, part of a conversation whose answers may yet be waiting for us to learn how and where to listen. Let your thoughts dwell there, in the poised expectancy of a universe that rewards both patience and courage, both faith in what is hidden and the steady dedication to draw closer, not by force, but by openness, discipline, and the willingness to keep asking. Perhaps, in another cycle of searching, a voice will answer from the patient dark, and the tale of messengers and their long cosmic vigil will find an echo in the questions you have carried quietly, faithfully, through all the years of your own seeking. And this too becomes a kind of contact between generations, between possible worlds, and, most gently, between you and the patient, watching dark. As the melody of patience and hidden questions softly lingers within you, as your imagination rests on the image of those quiet machines threading their paths through deep time waiting with infinite gentleness for a signal from an awakening mindlet, yourself feel how the story of the universe is built, not only on messages and artifacts, but on life itself, arising and wandering, scattering itself across darkness and possibility, with a resilience that echoes in your very cells. There is another kind of contact, subtler, and perhaps far more ancient, woven not by intention or intelligence, but by the profound tenacity of life's chemistry, the journey of living forms across worlds, through epochs, beneath the slow wheels of planets and stars, before there were words or tools, or the urge to build beacons and probes. There were molecules drifting on comets, hitching rides on asteroids, settling into warm ponds or icy hearts, branching and building in 1,000 unlikely gardens. Imagine for a moment your consciousness unfurling like a green shoot through soil, how the unfolding of existence so mysterious and fragile at every scale is in itself a story of restless migration, of seeds thrown by chance and carried by tides all the way across the cosmic sea. What if, hidden beneath the surface of the question, "Are we alone?" lies a softer, almost ancestral contact, one that precedes thought or language, the contact of life with life, of chemical kin recognizing faint but resonant clues in a strange world. Breathe slowly and picture the deep-time knot of civilizations, but of the living principle that animates cells, the wordless yearning to persist, to flourish, and to try again and again against all odds. Draw your awareness to the oldest stones around you. Beneath your feet, the earth carries a billion-years-old record of emergence, from the first pools rich with carbon and energy, to the continents thick with forests and the surge and retreat of ancient seas. In every layer, you can find the fingerprints of improbable persistence, the record of catastrophes survived, of extinctions endured, of fresh starts. It is a humbling exercise to realize that even now, as you listen, the atoms in your bones and the water in your cells have cycled through countless forms since rock, now blood, once rain, now song. In this endless recycling lies the secret of life's grip. It takes root wherever it can, and when swept away, it tries again, carried by wind and water, and perhaps by stones from the heavens. From this bedrock rises the intriguing idea of panspermia's notion that the spark of life did not wait patiently on a single world, but leapt at every chance to spread, to begin again, wherever the right warmth or ice or energy allowed. Consider how, in the vast, cold fields between the stars, comets and asteroids collide and shatter, sending fragments spinning, their insides sometimes warm enough to protect tiny, stubborn biochemistries. Imagine a world with living microbes buried deep beneath stone, torn from their home by impact, then drifting for thousands or millions of years before falling, at last, on a fertile planet. The mathematics of chance is daunting, yet the universe, so immense and old, provides opportunities that are themselves almost boundless. Life, then, might be not a singular miracle, but a cascade of wanderings, a diaspora written in dust, ice, and gentle meteor rain. Allow this idea to settle into you, not as a wild speculation, but as a humble inference from what you have seen unfold even here on Earth. Bacteria surviving for countless centuries, trapped in salt or ice, riding extreme heat or cold, seem almost engineered for endurance and travel. The biochemistry of some ancient spores hints at the possibility of stubbornness is greater than the adversity it faces. Why then should we suppose our world is utterly unique in this trait? If a single cell could seed a new beginning after a hard journey, if the recipe for replication can endure the cold kiss of space, perhaps every world with liquid and energy is already connected by a biological undercurrent more subtle than any message or probe. Now, let your thought drift outward toward Mars, toward the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, toward the billowing clouds of Venus, and then, much farther, to the garden of exoplanets circling faraway suns. What might we find if we look for evidence not of visitors, but of cousins' biosignatures that speak of kinship, not rendezvous? The science of exoplanet atmospheres becomes a kind of cosmic genealogy, searching for the marks of metabolism, oxygen where it should not last, methane in just the right balance, the faint trace of pigment molecules, the telltale swing of light as planets breathe and pulse with the seasons. You listen not for the words of intelligence, but for the chorus of metabolivza, chemical choir, faint but persistent. There is poetry in the search. Instead of awaiting a blaring call or a mechanical envoy, you listen for the soft exhalations of living worlds. A planet with too much oxygen in the presence of reducing gases. A world where colors change with seasons beyond what rocks or dust alone can explain. The gentle rise and fall of energy as light feeds not wasteland, but photosynthetic life. It is a form of contact at once older, quieter, and more intermatian acknowledgement that you may already share ancestry, not just destiny, with beings born beneath foreign stars. In this slow orbit of ideas, consider too that civilizations, if they arise, may be separated by such gulfs of time as to never overlap. This is the paradox of cosmic Timinga universe, large enough and old enough that intelligence blooms over and over, but rarely does the flowering of cultures coincide. If panspermia is true, then life's banner has traveled for aeons. But consciousness might be a late or ephemeral arrival, appearing in brief, scattered bursts, only to vanish before neighbors can call across the dark. The relics left behind are not satellites or radio echoes, but fossilized chemistries and ecosystems' chemical fingerprints that, when found, tell a story not of here now, but of here once. Pause for a breath. It is both a comfort and a kind of solitude to know that if you find evidence of alien biology, a protein, a pigment, a cell wall fossilate, maybe as a time traveler, reading the faded letters of a message written long before, or perhaps long after, your civilization's brief moment of awareness. The remains of life, not intelligence, become the first and longest-lasting witnesses to a cosmos that is seeded, interconnected, and ancient beyond memory. In this landscape, every new world discovered to be alive is not just a contact, but a reunion, a recognition that the fundamental yearning to live belongs not to humans alone, but to the very atoms that make them. Bring this idea even closer into your own body. Every time you marvel at the common molecule's DNA, the alphabet of proteins, the right-handed sugars, or the left-handed amino acids, you are bearing witness to either a stunning convergence or a deep relationship. Perhaps all life here is a single experiment, or perhaps a product of journeys begun far from Earth, destined to cross-pollinate whenever the opportunity emerged. The finding of life that is almost, but not quite, like our own echoes with familiar chemistry, but a stranger's code would be both a puzzle and an invitation, a riddle to decipher, a kin to greet, a perspective to embrace. You might ask, what becomes of the Fermi paradox? Then, in a universe seeded with panspermia, in a cosmos rich with ancient biologies but threadbare in intelligences, the answer is both subtle and grounding. Perhaps contact is not elusive nor absent, but simply fundamentally older contact as the universal chemistry that links not minds, but molecules. Every time a biosignature emerges from the depths of a telescope's eye, each time a sample returns from Mars or Europa with molecules not made by chance, we are encountering, indirectly, the universality of life. If intelligence is a rare fruit, then the cosmic tree is yet green with life, and our search must be attuned not only to greeting the gardener, but to understanding the soil and the seed. There is a call here for humility, not as an act of resignation, but as a stance of openness and gratitude. You are not the center, but a branch, not the only story, but a verse in an unfinished poem. When you gaze at the night sky and see sunlight reflected from Titan's hydrocarbon lakes or from the clouds above exoplanets, you are seeing the language of biology written, erased, and written again, a contact that predates ambition, that refuses ownership or hierarchy. Let the image grow in your mind. A universe where every world visited, every fragment analyzed, is a new verse in the ballad of panspermia. Without drama, without diplomacy, life calls to itself across the dark. Not "we are here," but "we were here," or "we might be here." Each microbe, each ancient protein, is a message that cannot be corrupted by translation or mistrust. The contact precedes language itself, and in finding these signs, we find not rivalry but kin, not conquest but reconciliation. You may sense within yourself a new gentleness toward the question of otherness. What if we are not the first, nor the most advanced, but simply the local manifestation of a much older, wider spreading? Does it make your sense of self less meaningful, or more? Are you consoled or unsettled, imagining that when we touch Martian soil or Europa's ocean, what waits to greet us may be our own distant relative's life that took another path through the great experiment of persistence? Let's let the idea take root that the wisest cosmic searchers are not only those who ask for evidence of machines or languages, but those who become gardeners, careful and reverent, searching for hidden cousins in every watery niche, every ancient crater, every shadowed vent or chemical imbalance. In the end, maybe the song of the universe is less about greeting than about harmonizing a discovery, that we have always been part of a chorus, quieter but deeper, each life one part of a cosmic chord. Allowed to grow in you, this awareness may shift your sense of hope from awaiting a visitor to cultivating an appreciation for the improbable kinship you already share with all that lives. Each new detection a molecule out of equilibrium, a pigment not explained by geology, an isotope swaying with the rhythm of a living world is a handshake offered across time. If, someday, astronomers report methane flowing in lockstep with unseen seasons on a distant planet, or photopigments coloring the light in non-random ways, or ancient spores awoken in Martian dust, will you not feel a lightness in your heart? It is the confirmation not only that we are not alone, but that life itself is more persistent, more creative than any myth. There dawns in this sensibility a profound comforter sense that the cosmos, for all its silences, is not cold, but teeming quietly. And perhaps, as you reflect on your own life, you can recognize how ancient bonds and resiliences underlie every daily uncertainty, every longing for connection. The search for cosmic kinship thus becomes not just a project for the instruments and the science, but for the heart a way to recognize that every act of resilience, in yourself, in others, echoes the deeper story of survival across the eons. Allow all this to steep, carrying you gently deeper into rest or meditation. If the first and deepest form of contact is life, recognizing life, then every time you draw breath, you are participating in the oldest conversation of all, the dialogue of molecules and memory, of patience and hope. Each small life, each seed or cell, carries within it the whisper of journeys begun so long ago, perhaps on other worlds, perhaps in other forms. There is no need for spectacle to confirm your place. You are, always have been, entwined in an unbroken web. So tonight, as your mind floats among planets and ancient oceans, among meteorites and the silent snow of comets, imagine yourself as part of that larger Voyager traveler, a host, a witness. Maybe one day we will find cousins on Mars, or a garden flourishing silently in the hidden depths of some icy moon, or a billion microscopic messengers scattered by the plumes of Enceladus or the jets of Europa, each one humming a song older than words. The act of searching is itself a kind of greeting, the act of discovery, a homecoming. And in this gentle inquiry, the silence of the stars is softened, not as a rejection, but as an invitation to remember how much we share with all that strives and endures. Wherever life is found in far-off worlds, beneath frozen crusts, or in the slight warmth of a star's reflected light, we discover not alienation, but an ancient rejoicing. Life, once begun, never truly lets go, and every world touched is a reminder that we are all, always, more than alone. And so, as you settle more deeply into the gentle web of kinship that life weaves across worlds, allowing the quiet truth of shared molecules and ancient survival to steady your heart, you may sense beneath the serenity an even stranger undertow, something that stirs the mind not only toward the past and the far away, but toward the possibility that what seems alien or unattainable might, in some astonishing way, be intimately connected to your own nature, to your own future, to the boundaries of reality itself. If every world may carry relatives out of deep time, And if each chemical echo is a kind of greeting across the ages, what if the visitors you have imagined in the night are less distant than you ever thought? What if, in some profound sense, they are another version of yourself? Pause, hear a long pause, let the air grow still in your room or wherever you are listening. Imagine not only two worlds, not merely the distance from one star to another, but realms braided together through time, and even through the hidden corridors of existence that science is only beginning to intuit. Could it be that the line separating us from them can sometimes dissolve completely, revealing not only the kinship of molecules, but the kinship of mind, of intention, of possibility? There is a dreaming current, subtle but persistent, at the heart of human stories, the longing to encounter, along the road of existence, a traveler who is also a mirror. From your first breath, you carry a cascade of inherited stories, some written in DNA, others in the myths and riddles you have heard at firesides and in books, and films the possibility that beings from elsewhere are not simply strangers but kinfolk separated by the slow rivers of time or the veils between dimensions barely understood. Such ideas at first emerge in the hush at the edge of sleep, or in those fleeting moments when the boundaries of the possible seem to blur. Perhaps what arrives in the dark, or what shivers at the edge of your perception, is not alien in the strictest sense, but a version of humanity changed, transfigured, grown in wisdom or estrangement, or perhaps not of flesh at all, but of code, or light, or a logic beyond present categories. Take a gentle, reflective breath. Let the idea linger that those we search for are, in some hypotheses, nothing more or nothing less than our own offspring, our own future selves, reaching backward through the labyrinth of time or flickering from another, adjacent fabric of reality. The suggestion thrills and humbles in a single cadence, that the search for contact is the search for our own potential, for the shape of our destiny, for the face we might one day wear, or the path we might one day tread. Consider, as you lay quietly, how the image of a visitor from the stars has always carried an ambiguous resemblance at all or small, luminous or frail. Intelligence is greater or drastically different from ours, yet strangely recognizable. Perhaps you have noticed this gentle rhyme. Eyes that are too familiar, forms almost human, curiosity that mirrors our own. In the long tradition of encounter stories, ancient art and modern narrative alike, there is often embedded the suspicion that these are not random forms, but echoes of what humanity may become. This intuition grows in the cracks science now explores. The strange new ways of thinking about time, causality, the architecture of reality. Pause for a moment to touch upon the grand paradoxes of time. The mind, for all its power, is built to experience cause and effect in a single direction. Morning follows night, and a seed follows the winter. Yet, inside the mathematics of the universe, in certain equations resting at the edge of general relativity and quantum theory, the straightness of time sometimes crumples, folds, and makes exotic detours. Imagine a future civilization, humanity many ages hence, or an intelligence born of our code, of our recursive dream shaving, found the cracks and the tunnels in the pavement of time. Might they reach backward, carefully, subtly, touching their own prehistory, not to rule or to cure, but to observe? Or perhaps, as in the most delicate forms of contact, are worn, to inspire, or simply to understand where they began. In that light, imagine what it means to meet an alien who is, in some profound and slippery way, us. It is a thought that both comforts and unsettles. If those who arrive in silence are our own remote descendants, biological, silicon, hybrid, or something stranger, what could they possibly hope to learn from us, their progenitors? Perhaps it is not conquest, nor even guidance, that motivates such journeys, but curiosity, nostalgia, or the longing to witness the bloom of their own origins. The grandfather paradox, so beloved of philosophical puzzles, flickers here as both caution and invitation. In the tangled thickets of time, intervention courts consequence, and so the watchers remain watchful, their touch so light as to be almost undetectable, their messages echoing in symbols, myths, the odd synchronicity of a dream you cannot quite explain. Think also of the equally strange suggestion that the ones who visit or appear, or flicker on the edges of perception, are not from a future or a past you can measure, but from neighboring fields of reality, other dimensions or brains, sharing space with your own but rarely intersecting, like streams separated by reeds. This notion, drawn from the outer edges of theoretical physics and philosophy, says that what we perceive as space is layered or clustered with alternative versions realities just adjacent, sometimes leaking into one another, sometimes locked in a dance whose steps cannot be predicted. If, on rare occasions, consciousness or matter slips through these fissures, what you perceive as alien is simply a neighbor from an apartment divided by the thinnest of walls. In both views, future humans and dimensional kinth, the act of contact is not one of first discovery, but of reunion, temporary and fleeting, intimate yet mysterious. You may sense, as you reflect, the humility required to approach these ideas. The line between science and story wavers gently, and yet the beauty is not diminished by uncertainty. The question you carry through these meditations becomes richer. Is the quest for others a quest for self-understanding, for reckoning with possibility, for learning how to greet the unknown as both kindred and other? Let this settle slowly in your mind. Think of travelers moving back along the threads of time, seeking not to shatter history, but to bear witness. Each of us, each generation, sends messages into the future, through culture, through science, through the dreams encoded in the stories we tell and the efforts we make. Perhaps in some cosmic symmetry, the future returns the favor, memories bending backward to inspire, warn, or simply reassure that time, though fragile, is not an impassable wall. There is a peculiar comfort in thinking that whatever emerges from the mist, those silent presences at the edge of history, myth, and sight, may have a stake in our flourishing, our choices, our sorrows. If they are our descendants, even distant or transformed ones, then we are more than local accidents. We are the roots from which branches grow, visible or hidden, or even lost. To encounter the future in the shape of the present is to encounter care, curiosity, perhaps even forgiveness. You may now sense, in the warmth of your own thoughts, a gesturing toward responsibility. What if the choices you make, the ways you live and build and dream, echo not only forward, but backward, shaping the possibility of encounter, of understanding, of kindness traveling both ways along the stream of time? The myth of the traveler who is also a guide appears in many stories. Perhaps the aliens that haunt our skies and literature are reminders that every action is both inheritance and bequest. At the margin of science, these ideas flicker, and dance-time travel and dimensional contact are not ruled out, but their proofs elude us. Their paradoxes outpace our understanding. The mathematics of wormholes, of quantum entanglement, of many worlds, suggest possibilities even as they insist upon caution. For each equation that dreams, there is another that dissolves its promise in the acid of uncertainty. But in this middle ground, between hope and evidence, the human mind finds much to contemplate, much to nurture, as both skepticism and faith in potential. Perhaps you have noticed, as you drift through these contemplations, that stories of encounter often circle back to use our hopes, our anxieties, our unresolved histories, the parts of ourselves we are slowest to recognize or embrace. The idea of visitors who are our own legacy or our dimensional kin is an encouragement to look with new gentleness at difference, to approach not with fear or the urge to dominate, but with the patience and care you wish your own future would show you. The self who meets the stranger may find, unexpectedly, an invitation to mature, to reconcile, to imagine more bravely. Pause, now, to tune in to the texture of your own life the ways you are. Even now, a traveler through time, a weaver of possibility, a visitor to realities both remembered and forgotten. The light glancing off a book you once cherished, the conversations that return to you in the quiet hours, the longings that never quite leave your heart, these are your own messages sent through the corridors of self, folded and refolded as you age. In this large meditation, it is less important that you resolve the paradox than that you become sensitive to the many ways contact and recognition are already ongoing, already woven into your story. Let your mind rest a while on the strangeness that remains 7 if the math of time travel never yields a machine, even if the doors between dimensions stay closed. The very act of entertaining such possibilities is one of generosity, of hope. It is the willingness to believe that you are both small and vast, bound by what is real, but always brushing the edges of what could be. The hypotheses that they are us, whether by time or by metaphysical adjacency, are invitations to be kinder stewards, more patient observers, and more active participants in the stories of becoming. So, as dusk thickens and sleep draws near, you can return to the image of the visitor who arrives with no need for translation, not because the words are the same, but because the longing is. They come to witness, to remember, to be astonished again by the old miracle. Whether their home is far in the unspooling future or just beyond the membrane of perception, their presence calls you to awe, to humility, to the joy of being, briefly and brilliantly, both host and guest in this mystery. And in that gentle balance, as your thoughts begin to settle, allow yourself the grace to rest knowing that whether the stranger is kin from your own ages yet to dawn, or a neighbor brushing your world from a parallel field, each theory, each story is a reminder. You are implicated in the vast unfolding, called not just to look outward, but inward and onward, a witness to your own becoming as well as the universe's. Contact then may begin as a search in the stars, but ultimately arrives as a meditation in the heart of reverent curiosity for what is, what has been, and what endless wonders, perhaps, you already carry within. From that serene space where you have lingered on the possibility that the cosmic other might be, in some circuitous path through time or dimension, a reflection of human destiny or memory, let your awareness return softly to the warming land of your own past landscape, layered with stone, story, and wonder. Every thread of speculation about worlds beyond and ages yet to come eventually loops back through the maze of human experience, pulling you gently to the ancient places where people first raised their eyes to the stars and wondered, as you do, what walks or waits in the vast darkness above. This is not only the story of the future, but also the story of memory itself, memory etched in the dust, shaped by hands, sung in myth, and carved in monuments older than recollection. Let yourself imagine, for a moment, walking through profound silence amidst ancient ruins. Imagine your bare feet upon cool stones shaped long before your birth, in places where the wind and the sun have witnessed so many lives come and go that time itself seems to slow. Touch the roughness of a monolith, or the perfect angle of a shadow cast across a calendar of megalithic stones, and feel, deep within, that shimmer of awe which arises when you encounter something built with intent but shrouded in mystery. This is the same quiet that pressed itself against the first humans who looked upon these marvels and wondered, who made this, when, and why? And beneath that, a quieter, more haunting question. Could it have been built with help, by minds from somewhere else, sometime else? Pause and allow this tantalizing possibility to unfold. In nearly every culture, you find tales some bold, some hidden in the undercurrent of everyday belief suggesting that Earth's earliest wonders were made by, or in concert with, beings not wholly of this world. Sometimes these are gods descending in fiery chariots, sometimes luminous strangers imparting language, knowledge, or secret technologies. Sometimes the teachers come from the sea, sometimes from the stars, always clothed in metaphor, awe, or enigma. The thesis of ancient contact is not new. It stretches from winged figures on Sumerian seals, through tales of luminous visitors in the Andes, to pyramid-building gods across continents and ages. At first glance, this is a deeply evocative notion, that some of your oldest monuments and myths may be memories fossilized in narrative of encounters far stranger than traditional history allows. Perhaps, as you close your eyes, you recall the staggering precision with which pyramids align to constellations, the sudden leaps in knowledge embedded in Babylonian star charts, the enigmas of Nazca lines, or the vast cyclopean stones that seem to have been set in place by means lost or never earthly at all. Or you can sense the resonance of stories in which mountains part, fires descend from the sky, or elders teach the ways of crops and measurement from a star. Let this idea ripple through you, testing not only your sense of wonder, but also your skepticism and patience you have cultivated through all these cosmic meditations. For the allure of attributing mystery to the intervention of others is ancient and powerful, and yet it demands a careful, mindful approach. The human mind, hungry for pattern and longing for meaning, easily falls prey to gaps in knowledge, those spacious silences in which awe is quietly stirred to invent wild answers. You may ask yourself, how do you balance respect for the ingenuity of ancestors with the humility to admit what you do not yet understand? How do you discern the point at which speculation becomes escape, or mystery is honored without being explained away? Consider, if you will, a gentle approach. Let your first step be reverence for the people, living and dead, who shaped the world with curiosity, labor, and astonishing resilience. Before leaping to otherworldly explanations, listen to what the stone and soil record. Recognize that engineering, astronomical precision, and even apparent anachronism are not in themselves proof of anything outside the scope of human possibility. The builders of Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, Great Zimbabwe, or the pyramids of both Egypt and Mesoamerica were not lacking in patience, vision, or organization. They used bone and bronze, community and trial, a wisdom learned over time as precious as any gift from the stars. Hold that in your heart, a kind of humility that makes room for both skepticism and awe. Then, with slow, careful breath, examine what evidence remains after the fog of legend is lifted. Are there truly stones whose origin defies comprehension? Are there technologies or motifs that cannot be explained by exchange, convergence, or lost knowledge within the cultures themselves? The method here becomes your candle in the cavern. For every monument, ask first what is really visible in the data, in the text or artifact. Then, seek the best, most coherent terrestrial explanation. Thereafter, see what resists all earthly stories. Often, what remains is not proof of impossible visitors, but a deeper wonder at the power of human imagination and collaboration. The process of building megaliths or encoding astronomical cycles into myth may appear, from a distance of millennia, to be miraculous or unaccountable, especially when seen in fragments, out of context, or out of time. But the closer you look, the more you find ingenious, iterative solutions methods of quarrying, measurement, social cooperation, religious or political impulses harmonized with the cycles of sun and moon and season. The great stones of your world were shaped and lifted not by forces beyond human reach, but by the collective will, the discipline, trial and error, and sometimes by accident or serendipity. Let yourself rest a while in that truth. It does not rob the monuments of their power or their aura of the mysterious, but transforms them. What is more exquisite? A temple raised by the hands and minds of ancestors, patient over generations in pursuit of a vision, or a shortcut to mystery that hands credit to distant strangers, be they gods, time travelers, or interstellar guides? Is not the greater awe to be found in the latent capacity for greatness hidden within your own species? And yet, do not rush to close the door entirely. If you bring compassion and a flexible awareness, if you neither scoff at the myth nor bow blindly to the improbable, what remains is a delicate tension, a readiness to notice, now and then, a detail that does not fit, a motif that truly resists even the best terrestrial explanations. Here you are invited not to leap, but to pause, to let the unexplained remain so, and to honor the possibility that in every mountain of myth and stone, there are veiled messages or memories whose full meaning has not yet unfurled. The presence of the inexplicable is not proof, but potential a permission for wonder without surrendering discipline. Listen also to the other heartbeat within the myth of ancient contact, its role as a mirror. Across cultures, the vision of knowledge descending from elsewhere functions also as a wisdom tale about openness and inspiration. Sometimes, these are not literal memories, but narrative vessels within which a people encode their value for the unknown, their reverence for the sky, or their longing to belong to a larger cosmic family. Do not dismiss what these stories do for those who dreamed and told them. They are patterns by which memory and aspiration are woven together, allowing a culture to imagine futures as well as pasts. You too when you feel small beneath the stars and invent, in your own heart, stories of others coming to teach, or rescue, or warn, are speaking in the same ancient key. Let your thoughts flow gently through this recognition that ancient alien hypotheses, in every era, serve as invitations to look closer not only at the stones, but at yourself. Are you inclined to find answers outside because you do not trust the resources within? Do you seek contact with the other as a way of ennobling the self, exalting the human story, or expressing the ache of not quite belonging in the silence? Whatever the motive, see how myth and monument are always also a conversation within the soul, a poem about what it means to be a seeker, a builder, and a child of the unknown. At the same time, you must keep safe the flame of inquiry. If ever you come upon evidence that does not yield to terrestrial explanation materials whose composition resists all known metallurgy, artifacts whose structure is irreducibly non-human, a language embedded so deeply in stone or code that randomness and human making must be ruled out, then, truly, the interpretive frame shifts. Science, at its most honest, is a practice of readiness. To recognize when the weight of evidence compels you to revise even the most cherished laws, and to embrace the unknown with humility and clarity. Imagine this with care. If a time comes when a relic is found, a true anomaly, a new epoch would begin. A chapter not in fantasy, but in the slow, communal labor of metrology and interdisciplinary scholarship. Testing would multiply, methods would harden, the questions would become more technical and more honest. Is this the residue of a visitation, or some now lost chapter of terrestrial civilization? Only a patient and rigorous engagement, open to both sides, could draw out the answer. This discipline is its own kind of respect for your ancestors, whose accomplishments should never be too swiftly borrowed by the unknown, and for the unknown itself, which must always remain possible, its voice neither drowned by cynicism nor over-amplified by impatience. Feel again, as you rest deeply into the rhythm of this inquiry, the power that comes from holding contradiction. You live in a time when data are both abundant and easily misused, when myths proliferate at the speed of speculation, and when technical knowledge often moves so fast that it becomes easy to forget the slower, ancestral wisdom of hands on stone and hours beneath the sky. But you also live in an age capable of testing spectroscopy, dating, deciphering, capable of pulling the thread of truth from the tangle of desire and conjecture. This is a gift, and also a challenge. It asks you every day to return to the stones, the records, the scars of history without haste or pride, to ask again what is truly there. As the darkness thickens, there is comfort in this humility. Whether the wonders of antiquity sprang from horsepower and star wisdom passed down through countless winters, or whether, in some rare case, another intelligence lent a hand, the right response is neither credulity nor skepticism alone, but gratitude. Stand before the monuments, real or imagined, and bow to mystery in all its forms, the mystery of making, of yearning, of asking. What more beautiful inheritance could there be than the freedom to wonder, to revise, to remain in inquiry rather than close the book? When, on a quiet evening, you sit with the myths and marvels of those who came before you, when you let yourself dwell upon the possibility that Earth itself may have been touched by a visitor, a teacher, a strangerlet, that possibility be a source of energy, not an escape from the burden of understanding, but a wind at your back, a reason to look closer and longer, investing care and discipline in the reading of stones, texts, and stars. And when the explanations are simple, be satisfied. When they are not, let your heart beat with wonder, and leave the questions open for those yet to come. If you find that something deep within you stirs at the idea of hidden contact, of wisdom gained from afar, allow yourself both the thrill and the discipline of the seeker. Share that feeling, what you find believable, what you doubt, where mystery pushes you, knowing that the exchange of such reckonings is part of humanity's oldest dialogue, a weaving of skepticism and longing, a unison of humility and restless curiosity. And so, as your consciousness nestles down for rest, take comfort that you walk a path many have walked before, through myths, ruins, shadows, and bright conjecture, always on the trail of the other, always returning, in the end, to find your own reflection in the mystery. In honoring the unknown, in cherishing both the expertise of your ancestors and the openness to marvels yet undiscovered, you keep alive the oldest invitation of all: to ask, to wonder, to dwell deeply in the possibility that there is always more to discover, both within yourself and in the worlds that rise, stone upon stone, beneath the eternal and mysterious sky. As you continue this slow journey through the overlapping mysteries of myth, stone, and human possibility, let your awareness drift gently back from the ancient dust of monuments, carrying with you not only the humility to honor your ancestors and their achievements, but also the discipline to hold doubt and wonder as equal partners in your search for truth. Feel, in the hush that settles around you, a subtle change in the air's soft urgency, as if the present itself is leaning in and asking for your attention. Beneath the timeless rhythm of storytelling and stonecraft, there pulses the electric heartbeat of a world in which every sensation, every story, every streak of light can be tracked, measured, saved, and analyzed. This world, yours, is one forged not only by memory but by sensor hundreds, thousands, millions of eyes and instruments, tuned to capture every anomaly the sky and the earth might offer. Imagine yourself one quiet night, not at an ancient temple, but under an open sky, perhaps next to a screen illuminated by the familiar glow of data streams and news feeds. In this era, the riddles of the stars have not faded. If anything, they have become more immediate, more intimate, woven into the fabric of your daily experience through the rise of technology. Unidentified aerial phenomena, sometimes called by their more familiar, if loaded, acronym UAP-FAVE, leapt from the margins of anecdote and folklore into the cold, sharp focus of scientific inquiry. With each new report, you find yourself standing at the threshold between what can be measured and what can only be imagined, between the human inclination toward pattern-seeking and the hard discipline of evidence. Perhaps you have seen the grainy video small blips caught moving in impossible arcs, or luminous crescents darting across the clouds. You have heard from pilots, radar operators, astronauts, and ordinary people who speak with sincerity, conviction, and sometimes anxiety. In a world where every phone is a camera, where satellites spin in silent witness above every continent, where massive digital networks flicker and record, each new sighting becomes part of a collective archive, growing heavier and more intricate with every passing year. The mystery is no longer confined to the distant past or to campfire stories. It is live, persistent, and hungry for explanation. Let yourself rest in the complexity of this present moment. The century in which you live is characterized by a tension between transparency and overload, between access to volumes of information once unimaginable and the challenge of discerning what is meaningful within that flood. It is possible to feel both empowered and overwhelmed, carried along by the currents of data, but ever aware that signals can be lost in noisy and that your deeply wired impulse to believe, to connect dots, is sometimes your greatest vulnerability. Reflect, for a slow moment, on what truly makes an observation compelling. Why are some stories dismissed, others clung to with tenacity, while a few become the focus of global obsession? At the heart of this question lies the problem of proof of concept, more subtle and demanding than mere belief. Evidence asks not only for a story or even for a pattern, but for something that can be checked and repeated, that stands up even when your longing for the extraordinary is set carefully aside. The discipline of science is to scale your excitement to the rigor of your method, neither suppressing wonder nor surrendering to gullibility. Let your thoughts wander back to the difference between anecdote and measurement. It is a distinction that cuts through all levels of inquiry, from the intimate details of personal memory to the official reports delivered by governments and militaries. For many decades, sightings of unidentified objects in the sky were treated as curiosities, lumped with legend, dismissed as artifacts of fatigue, illusion, or wishful thinking. Word of mouth, however earnest, rarely moved the needle of scientific consensus. Then, across the decades of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, a slow shift began, triggered not by a sudden mass of irrefutable evidence, but by the advent of robust, multi-sensor data. Consider how a single reporter pilot, Witnessing a strange craft can be tantalizing, but incomplete. If that observation is mirrored by radar, confirmed on infrared, matched by optical tracking or satellite record, the temperature of the conversation changes. With every layer of instrumentation, a new discipline is required to check, to calibrate, to control for error. The best cases, those which refuse to yield to natural or technological explanation, are those supported by multiple independent lines of measurement, where data is raw, time-stamped, cross-referenced, and available for re-examination. Yet the story remains complicated. Measurement, for all its promise, does not always settle the question. Radar can flicker with false positives, sensors glitch, optical illusions bloom at altitude, and technology unknown, classified, or simply misidentified can outpace the untrained eye. The more you look, the clearer it becomes that every piece of evidence is on a spectrum, from fascinating but ultimately subjective to rigorously verified yet still ambiguous. The scientific community, with its ethic of radical skepticism, has demanded a simple but formidable standard. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and until an observation moves up the ladder from mere sighting to multi-sensor confirmation to reproducibility and cross-verification, it remains unresolved. Breathe into this humility, this awareness that certainty is always provisional. The best researchers, when faced with a genuinely anomalous UAP report, do not leap to conclusions. They build a patient foundation of exclusion. Sometimes, what remains is simply a deeper form of not knowing, a mystery preserved rather than explained away. This form of suspense is neither defeat nor weakness. It is the open hand of scientific inquiry, refusing to fill silence with assumption. You may feel, as you rest in this complexity, a subtle invitation to relax your need for closure. In the presence of UAPs and all such persistent mysteries, there is value in not rushing to assign meaning either as proof of alien agency or as evidence of human folly. Sometimes, the practice of maturity is in learning to live with questions that remain questions, in letting uncertainty coexist with curiosity, and not allowing ideological habit either of disbelief or of credulity to freeze your understanding. What you seek is not premature certainty, but the kind of grounded, dynamic curiosity that can update itself as evidence grows, that can change shape as information thickens or thins. Let yourself imagine now the scale by which you measure evidence. At its lowest rung stands the anecdotia story, however heartfelt, which cannot be checked or repeated. Next comes sensor data, recorded by a single device, subject to error but a step beyond memory. Higher still is the case supported by multiple sensors, all recording the same event from different perspectives, agreeing on time, shape, motion. Even higher on this ladder, and nearly mythical in occurrence, is the recovery of physical material, a fragment or device that can be brought to a laboratory, tested, dissected, its properties compared against what you know is possible. The upper reaches, the true summit of proof, would be a demonstration, a repeatable event, under controlled circumstances, with variables isolated, recorded from all angles, made open for the most skeptical observer to scrutinize. Almost nothing in the history of UAPs, or for that matter in the history of claimed miracles, ever reaches this summit. The challenge is to restrain imagination while remaining open to the unlikely. Breathe again into this understanding. The ladder exists not to discourage, but to keep the search honest, to scale your wonder to the strength of your footing. It is an ethic that echoes across the entire sweep of science, to build from the tentative to the certain, never leaping so far ahead that you cannot re-examine your steps. Trust is accrued, not bestowed. Conviction is fortified by transparency, not by secrecy. In this century of sensors, more than at any moment before, the possibility exists for collective, open scrutiny, the pooling of data across agencies, borders, and belief systems. Let your awareness linger for a moment on the importance of openness, of data being shared, not hoarded, of signals being cross-checked by independent teams, not filtered by secrecy or classified for the sake of politics. In a world thick with surveillance and defense, this is perhaps the greatest practical barrier. So much of what is collected is shrouded by need, to know, by national interest, by the inertia of bureaucracy. The most tantalizing cases occasionally bloom in the harsh light of declassification videos, fragments of sensor logs, ambiguous artifacts, but so much more remains tucked away, inaccessible not only to the public, but to the broader scientific community. This is the bottleneck on progress, the shadow that can slow or distort the honest pursuit of what is real. In this tension, you may sense that deliberate patience is itself a practice of peace. Accepting the slow pace of disclosure and the halting progress of study is an act of humility, a reminder that some ants, especially those with the power to upend paradigms, will arrive only when the habits of secrecy yield to the demands of public scrutiny. Perhaps you, as part of this connected, watchful world, have a role to play in asking for transparency, in keeping an open mind but a disciplined sense of proportion. Now, tune your attention to the other side of the spectrum, the risk of misattribution, the ways in which human psychology and technology can conspire to produce false signals, to turn the ordinary into the remarkable. The sky, for all its elegance, is full of oddities, clouds glowing in strange light, satellites flaring, weather balloons drifting, drones moving with inhuman agility. Artifacts of camera and radar, shadows and lights, all can deceive. The human mind, meanwhile, is built both to see patterns and to fill gaps, to want narrative even when the data resists it. Here again, your discipline is required, to treat each extraordinary claim as an invitation to deeper examination, never as license to substitute excitement for method. There is a freedom in this humility, a peace in letting wonder breathe without compulsion. By remaining in this steady, receptive state, you keep the door open to genuine discovery, whether that means confirmation of long-suspected realities or the deepening of your appreciation for how strange and beautiful even ordinary phenomena can be when seen in a new light. This form of open-ended inquiry does something astonishing. It makes the present moment not just a crossroads between past and future, known and unknown, but a kind of living experimentum in which the role of the observer, the witness, the question asker, is as vital as that of any scientist. As your thoughts settle towards stillness, let yourself contemplate the utility of mystery. The phenomenon of UAPs and their kin, whatever their ultimate explanation, drive the collective for demanding better instruments, more transparency, a stronger culture of skepticism and listening. They are crucibles for new habits of openness and rigor. They teach humility, not only in what you fail to explain, but in how you explain it. Each persistent unknown sharpens the language of proof and the tools of perception. In this manner, mystery becomes teacher, and the lesson is one of patient curiosity, the willingness to engage the world, and the sky, expecting to be surprised. And if, after all the layers are peeled away, you find yourself without a final answer, without the certainty that either debunks or confirms the most fantastic possibilities, remain content. It is enough, sometimes, to dwell in the lucid uncertainty that breeds both new questions and new resilience. Leave your reflections, your encounters with anomaly, as they are open, provisional, shining with the honest warmth of disciplined inquiry. In doing so, you inherit the deepest rhythm of the cosmos. To wait, to wonder, to measure and ask, always knowing that the greatest discoveries are born not in the rush to explain, but in the quiet willingness to attend the present moment with care. Now, as you prepare to sleep, or to let this gentle stream of curiosity take you another step into the night, pause to share your own impressions. If you feel moved, a memory, a moment of fascination, a question you wish the data could answer. This exchange, humble and open, is itself a kind of contact between uncertainty and wonder, between those who search and those who dream. In honoring the world's persistent enigmas, you nurture both the capacity to be patient and the strength to keep questioning. And so, in a world of sensors and stories, let your mind rest easy. The universe will keep its secrets for as long as it needs to. But you, watcher at the threshold, are part of the unfolding, gently luminous vigilance that makes discovery possible, one honest moment at a time. So here you are, having traversed a landscape of myth, evidence, humility, and infinite expectancy, slow wandering through stone and silence, light and signal, each layer teaching you to dwell with patience and to cradle your uncertainty without shame. Now, linger with me in this fragile space between what is seen and what is only hoped for. Imagine, with care, a night like any other, where the vast digital web of human attention scans the sky, almost mechanically humming, yet in its heart, quietly brimming with the ache for connection. And then, with the smallest breath of inevitability, a new rhythm enters the noise. A pulse, regular, sharp, persistent. At first, it is only a suggestion-own more pattern in the endless song of the universe, perhaps. But as days and then weeks pass, it refuses to fade. Instead, it repeats, unwavering, from an otherwise quiet patch of sky. It grows from anomaly to suspicion, and then to hope, as other observatories point their glass and copper and silicon in the same direction. Feel into your own body that first fragile tremora restlessness that belongs to all who have ever longed for proof. The team of radio astronomers who notice the signal work with ritual carefulness. They check frequencies against known planets, against satellites, against the pulse of spinning neutron stars. One by one, the ordinary explanations fall away. Colleagues in distant places, speaking in the lexicon of patient skepticism, begin their careful confirmations, launching a global effort bound by the laws of peer review, method, and transparency. The pulse, exquisitely regular, stubborn in its defiance of natural causes, rises to the impossible demand made of all great claims: replication. Now, among you, the conversation changes no longer the frantic thrill of possibility, but the measured urgency of verification. Committees assemble, data is open to scrutiny, professional rivalries step aside as a sense of planetary unity emerges, held together by the shared weight of the question. Private hopes churn quietly underneath, but the process is public, cautious, witnessed by millions through the glow of screens and news bulletins. Each step is carefully documented, every claim double-checked, every instrument recalibrated. The extraordinary is no longer left to trust or reputation. It must be built on the bedrock of evidence. Allow yourself to be swept, gently, into the patient machinery of post-detection. The protocol is clear-woven over decades by dreamers and skeptics alike. First, independent confirmation, then global consultation. All data must be preserved, not only for the immediate generation, but for those who will come after, each eye and mind adding to a slow mosaic. Messages are shielded from premature release, not because of fear, but because history demands caution. The price of haste is confusion. The reward for rigor is clarity. Scientific journals open their gates for scrutiny, and panels call for transparency, resisting the temptation to hoard the knowledge or bend it to national or institutional pride. Your imagination might reach at this point for the impulse to answer not in noise or spectacle, but in something worthy of the moment. But here, a different patience is required. The conversation rises from the level of laboratories to the halls of governments, to the desks of ethicists and philosophers, to community forums and dinner tables. Every voice seeks to weigh in. Every fear and every hope bursts through. Suddenly, contact is no longer a fantasy, but an unsettling, dazzling fact. There is, in this hush, a slow dawning realization, one that grows more luminous with each passing day. The world you knew cannot remain unchanged. The coordinates of meaning, faith, curiosity, all shift a fraction of a degree. Yet the need for collective wisdom intensifies. The research community, far the most prepared, the most disciplined, grapples openly with its own limitations. To check, to recheck, to risk ridicule by publishing doubt, and to resist the cheap temptations of spectacle or profit. international organizations lean into the protocols developed over slow decades. First, do no harm not merely in the biological sense, but in the realm of spirit and trust. In this unhurried interlude, imagine the protocols stretching beyond the realm of science and into every layer of human society. The media is encouraged, gently but persistently, to avoid sensationalism. Governments are urged toward openness, not secrecy. Schools and universities prepare for long nights of reckoning and wonder. Method becomes a shield, but also a bridge. There are calls for calm, for a window of silence in which the data can be further analyzed. Deliberations can unfold, and the nuances of meaning, scientific, cultural, existential, can be sifted with care equal to the moment. You may feel a tension now, the world yearning to speak, to wave across the black with some emblem of hope or peace or intelligence. But wisdom and humility are demanded in equal measure. The history of first contact in every domain, from tribe to empire, from explorer to uncontacted village, teaches caution, as cultures colliding often bring pain as well as discovery. Ethicists debate whether silencing the face of such a monumental threshold is prudence or fear. What risks, great or subtle, might an answer invite? Miscommunication, misunderstanding, unwanted attention, even harm from those listening in darkness. Who could possibly speak for all Earth, not only for nations, but for generations, for those who do not yet live? The question reverberates like a gong at the heart of every deliberation. Let yourself rest, for a moment, in this suspended space of not knowing. Tradition and protocol offer only preliminary structure. The real work is in the slow, open deliberation that follows. Multiple paths unfurlone of transparency, where every human is part of the unfolding. Another of guarded discretion, where caution holds sway over the thrill of discovery. In this fragile middle, ethics are written and rewritten, tested by the unpredictable complexities of culture, science, and spiritual hunger. Imagine the shape of discourse that follows a choreography of listening and restraint. Trusted voices in science call for broad, inclusive consultation. Religious and philosophical leaders encourage reflection, not dogma. Grassroots communities circulate what the signal means for hope, for fear, for the meaning of we. Each group draws their own wisdom forward, but all agree on one necessity: that the conversation must remain open, diverse in voices, resilient against the tides of fear or triumphalism. Take a breath and slip deeper into the midnight blue of thoughtful waiting. Suppose the signal is sent again, perhaps with a deliberate change, a sign of reception, a clue that interpretation is possible, or an invitation to dialogue. Here, methods of communication grow cautious and creative. Linguists and mathematicians work in tandem, passing pulses and intervals for hints of structure, for the glimmer of a logic that transcends biology, language, or experience. Perhaps the rhythm evokes prime numbers, a pattern in the digits of pi, sequences that beckon the mind toward universality rather than accident. As this dialogue unfolds, humanity's next maturity test begins not in technology, but in the quality of listening, the tolerance for ambiguity, the courage to stand uncertain in the presence of the new. Even as messages are passed, the broader challenge is managing the world's reaction, to remain honest about what is known and what is not, to open the doors of discovery wide without allowing them to become storm gates for hysteria, rumor, or exploitation. Consider, too, the quiet call for equity, the knowledge that such a turning in history belongs not to the wealthy, the privileged, or the powerful alone, but to all. There are discussions slow, laborious, precious about access, how to share knowledge so that no group is left in ignorance or suspicion, how to distribute the wisdom and burden evenly, to refuse the old patterns by which information becomes a tool of control. In this new territory, the stakes are nothing less than human dignity. Will the first great moment of interstellar dialogue be the occasion for openness, or for secrecy and hoarding? The road is not easy. Older habits of statecraft, of reflex, of tribal wariness are not swept away by protocol alone. They yield only to deliberate, layered transparencito, the slow building of trust across all the lines that once divided villages, faiths, and nations. Within this fog of awakening, imagine the spiritual response, the way the news settles into every kitchen, every place of worship, every solitary artist or thinker at the edge of society. There are quiet tears of joy, but also of confusion, disquiet, even mourning for old certainties. The old cosmologies are held up to new light, some fracture, some shine more deeply. The courage required now is not in analysis or reply, but in the sacred practice of holding space in gathering friends and strangers to sit by the shore of what has changed, to speak more honestly of hope, loss, awe, and grief. Rituals will be remade. Ancient prayers will be given new meaning. Old songs will acquire another verse. Let yourself notice how the pace of events slows deliberately in response. There is a conscious effort not to answer too quickly, not only for the sake of security, but for the dignity of the search. Some call for a long period of silence, time to gather, to reckon, to simulate conversations and analyze dreams, to invite responses not only from experts, but from dreamers, children, poets, those whose voices have never before shaped questions of such magnitude. Out of this collective breath, there grows the possibility of a first reply that is not merely noise, not merely the assertion of power or the sign of anxiety, but an act of careful meaning. Picture the scene, days or even seasons from first signal. A council forming, perhaps a simple message taking shape, a resonance of prime numbers, or a diagram of water molecules, or a selection from the electromagnetic spectrum. The choice is heavy, and the burden is acknowledged. But more crucial yet is the sense that, before you speak, you must find your own consensus, not of uniformity, but of generosity. That what the earth sends first will be, above all, honest, vulnerable, and open to the long unfolding of relationship. Now, as you cradle the full weight of history converging on this gentle, aching moment, allow your imagination to slip backwards and forwards. See the centuries of preparation, the stories whispered from mouth to mouth of first contact, and know that every culture has practiced for this. The best response, when it comes, will be both the fruit of generations and the seed for generations yet to come. Perhaps it will not even be a message at all, but a patient continuation of listening, a commitment to be present, to learn, to offer the dignity of time and attention to the unknown. If you listen carefully in the heartbeat of the night, you may sense that the first convincing sign, the authentic signal, will not be an alarm to divide us, but an invitation to dialogue, a persistent melody threading through your days and nights. Not a control, nor a victory, but a slow opening. We are here too. We exist, not as conqueror or comforter, but as fellow witnesses to the same unfolding mystery. So let your breath ease, and promise yourself the gift of responding not with haste, but with reverencia, a pause in which humanity becomes more itself in the presence of another. If you are drawn to share what this vision stirs in you, to offer your own prayer or your own question, do so knowing that in this moment, every heart and every mind, poised between the quiet of the stars and the keening hope within, is a voice in the world's new song. Let the invitation stand, to grow together, not in certainty or possession, but in mutual astonishment, in the slow, luminous work of learning to belong. And perhaps, as the days recede and the night deepens, you will hear within yourself the very beginning of contact. The slow pulse of longing meeting the patient rhythm of discovery, 3 gentle notes sounding in the long dusk between worlds. We are here, too.